Okay. Looks like all three of us are here. Welcome, everyone. This is Andres Restart. I am joined by my good friend and co-host Brandon, also known as Nodnarb, and Samuel A is joining us this week as well. His YouTube channel is linked in the description below. How you guys doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. Just relaxing, enjoying my time off. I don't have work tomorrow, so yeah.
Nice.
Nice.
I also
Nice.
don't have work tomorrow. Just chilling. I did have work today, and all weekend I have been out doing stuff. Went to the river, floated down the Guadalupe River in San Antonio, which was fun. And then after I got home, I went fishing with my friend, and so I've just been doing stuff. And then I went to work, so I'm kind of tired. But other than that, actually, I've had a lot of fun. So
Nice. Nice. I don't even remember what I did on the weekend. Oh, I remember now. I played Tears of the Kingdom, and I binge watched the first season of Suits. Finally, it's actually really good. That was my weekend.
nice.
I started One Piece very recently for the first time.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think of it?
It's very good. I like the silliness combined with the action in it. It's a very nice blend.
Oh yeah, One Piece. Yeah, it's definitely a good mix of comedy and action. Like if you're going in looking for a very serious anime, that's not what One Piece is.
No.
But if you're going in just looking for a really fun, enjoyable adventure that has the occasional serious moment, but a lot of comedy and just it's just kind of like it's a lot of variety. It's very well rounded, I would say. So yeah, but if you're looking for something like that, it's definitely a good time.
There's not too much filler arcs in it either.
Compared
only
to
like
Naruto,
5%.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's very small, for sure. But guys in the chat, if you could let me know how everything is looking and sounding, I would very much appreciate that while we're still early on in the show. And for those who are new here, this is a Nintendo podcast. We tend to do every Monday night. And for this week, we're going to be talking about, we have two main topics. Well, there's kind of like a third-ish topic, but I'm not sure how much we have to say on it. We'll see. But the basic plan tonight is to talk about this kind of theory that's been going around recently that we may get a Switch 2 teaser in late October, early November, and how that may work, if that makes sense or not. So we're going to be talking about that, speculating on it, and just sort of, I guess we'll put up a poll at some point, just sort of seeing if you guys think it's likely or not. But that's going to be like the big topic for the evening. But we're also going to be getting into talking about what's next for open world Zelda. And it's mostly speculation. We do have a little bit of information from Fujibayashi. He already has some ideas on the game. There was a Famitsu interview that came out recently. There are currently no DLC plans for Tears of the Kingdom, but I still think there's some material we have that gives us somewhat of an understanding of what to expect for the next big Zelda. So we're going to be talking about that and just sort of like what we would like to see in the next open world Zelda game. And then for that third-ish topic that I'll probably introduce here during the Q&A, it's mostly just about Hideki Kamiya from Platinum Games. He is parting from Platinum Games, moving on to do his own thing away from them. And that's kind of interesting. Hideki Kamiya is responsible for some really popular games that a lot of us have really enjoyed over the years. So we'll be talking a bit about that, and just whatever else you guys bring up with the chat. It's all welcome. So that is the general plan for the evening. But before we get into those topics, I would like to open up the show with some Q&A. We'll focus on some Q&A for a bit, get the ball rolling, and then we'll jump into the topics. Let me just see here. All right. Well, okay. Let me pull up our chat. Okay, let's see. All right. Orlando Mota, sounding good, boys. Let's go. Okay, thank you very much. Awesome. Lord Alduin, sound and look good, bro. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, good. So it seems like we are good to go.
Heck yeah.
Let's get into the questions. So I responded to this earlier. This was posted before, like when the podcast was scheduled ahead of time. So like this person may not even be here now, but if you are, hello, how are you? But earlier, Nathan Corcoran stopped by and said, "We aren't seeing shit until after the holidays. Everyone needs to chill with these Switch 2 leaks. So far, it's all clickbait." So, firstly,
I do think that's the likely situation, but considering all these amiibo leaks and stuff, I don't think a reveal this year is out of the question, especially
Yeah.
considering they haven't done their price drop.
yeah.
But yeah.
I want to save that for, because that's like kind of like our big topic for today. But I just want to address the whole clickbait thing. So the title reads, "A Nintendo Switch teaser this year?" Question mark. It is a question. We are questioning if it can happen or not. We're gonna have a discussion, a debate on it, and then we'll also be talking about our thoughts on the next open world Zelda. So I don't know if there's no lies. Those are the topics we're talking about. And fact of the matter is, we do not know what's going to happen. There may be something Switch 2 announced this year. We don't know. I'm not saying it will, but I'm also saying it won't. That's the point of the discussion tonight. And yes, we are going to be talking about those amiibo restock things, because that could be hinting at something. But we'll dive more into that a little bit later. Let's see. Alex Blackfire, Andres, my man, how are you? I'm okay. I don't know if I have anything like crazy that's going on. I'm just kind of doing my thing. So yeah, I'm good.
Just grinding.
Pretty much, yeah. My goal. This is an internal goal, but by me saying it out loud, it's no longer as internal. My goal is to hit 100,000 subscribers sometime in 2024, and I'm basically banking on the big next gen push. That's usually when a lot of gaming YouTubers tend to get their big growths, is during the beginning of a new generation. That's probably how most of the Nintendo YouTubers you watch now, most of them gained most of their popularity when Switch 2 was coming out, when Switch 1 was coming out. So my optimistic perspective is, okay, I want to make a big push, in 2024 when Switch 2 comes out. But we'll see what happens. I guess I'm kind of just talking about it because why not? But I'll tell you that right now, if you watch my videos, just say I'm aiming to hit 50,000 by the end of the year, which I'm totally aware is seeming very unlikely at this stage, because I would have to, let's say we got like 3.5 months, not even, we have less than 3.5 months left, and we just recently hit 32,000 subscribers, which is great, but there's still 18,000 to gain in 3.5 months, and we're gaining 1,000 to 2,000 subscribers. So 2,000 would be a good month currently post Tears of the Kingdom rush, right? Yeah. But of course, we're in a lull period right now. This is like a down period. So crazy things would likely have to happen for me to hit 50,000 by the end of the year. But I'm on the grind.
Another Tears of the Kingdom level hype train. Like if Switch 2 got announced this year, you could hit 50K.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see what happens. But, I have goals. The point of a goal for me is I don't make a goal so I can hit it. I make a goal so I can push myself to hit it, if that makes sense.
Right.
Because if you just pick a goal that you'll achieve, then you're not going to really push yourself. What's the point of the goal? The goal is to push yourself, right? So we'll see what happens. But, I'm just going to continue making content, make the videos that I make, and try and do a little bit better. But we'll see what happens. But yes, I'm good. That's the short answer.
To aim high and aim higher than what you expect to get.
You know what? You're right. That's it. We're changing the goal. It's no longer 50. We're going to hit 1 million subscribers by the end of this October. See you in a few weeks, kids. Yeah.
The time Mario Wonder comes out. Yeah.
Yeah, who knows? All right. Giancarlo,
you got to continue your Breath of the Wild stream. You got to beat Calamity Ganon. That's what you need to do.
You know what? Maybe that's the ticket. I do need to get my revenge on him. That is fair. So, well, we may do a few game streams. I've been thinking about doing an F-099 one as well. We'll see.
Ooh,
anyways, Giancarlo added me. Unless Nintendo want to destroy Switch holiday sales, there Will be no announcement for Switch sooner. Expect to announce it next year. Yeah,
I mean, that has been my thinking thus far.
that has also been my thinking thus far. But I made a point in the video I published on Thursday when this news was kind of circulating, or theory was circulating. And the kind of realization I had was that when we look at the situation when the original Nintendo Switch was announced or teased back in October of 2016, a lot of people point to that and think, oh, okay, hardware can be announced around this time. Maybe, right? But what Brandon and I have contested, I'm sure many others have said, is that, well, it only made sense then because the Wii U was a dead system.
Right.
So Nintendo had no sales to ruin by announcing the Switch then. But
Yeah.
the realization that I've had recently is that while that may be true, it's only looking at part of the overall picture. Because the Nintendo Switch is not only a successor to the Wii U, but also a successor to the Nintendo 3DS.
Mm.
And the Nintendo 3DS was going strong back in holiday of 2016. There were
Yeah.
games coming out around that time. They were selling new systems around that time, bundles around that time. They were selling games and revisions all the way up until 2019. So I think the argument doesn't hold as much water as we initially thought, Brandon. Because technically,
the Switch,
if Nintendo says the Switch is a
Switch-
3DS, then it's still totally possible they could do a teaser just like they did in 2016. What were you gonna say, Sam?
Yeah, the Switch, they could do like a deep price cut on it and make it the super budget console, because Switch 2 is likely to be 400. With the type of power we're looking at, T239 is not going to come cheap.
No.
So, and they have to have those AI cores, and it's kind of rumored that they're going to like custom manufacture it to have Lovelace architecture, which I believe is the 40 series, right?
Yeah, it's supposed to have certain features. It may use the tensor cores from that, especially if it's using frame generation.
Yeah, that's not going to be cheap, considering how much their chips cost. So it's going to be 400, and they might be even taking a loss on it at 400.
Yeah, that's definitely something to consider. Like I do think a price drop has to happen, but I don't think that. I think it's too late for that to happen this year. But we'll again, this is kind of all about the main topic, and we'll get to that. But I just kind of want to go through the chat for a bit first. Let's see here. Hello there, Charles Shadell. I'm not sure what I helped with, but you are welcome. Coaxy Jr., glad to be here after a long, hard day at work. Thank you as always. You're welcome. If the thanks are just for putting out the podcast, then you are welcome. I'm glad to come out here on Monday nights and just talk about Nintendo. So if that helps you guys a little bit, I'm glad I could help. Truth Bomb. The next Zelda game should not be open world. Literally everyone is doing it now. It's becoming boring. Zelda was once unique, original, and the best at what it did. Well, I would argue that Zelda is still unique and original and the best at what it does. If anything, I would argue Zelda does more new now than what they did before. Developers are just completely floored and shocked at what Nintendo accomplished with Tears of the Kingdom on the Switch. Like they're innovating from a developer's perspective and implementing all the different mechanics they implemented in Tears of the Kingdom and how different they are from Breath of the Wild. When they already had mechanics in place for Breath of the Wild, and they spent years working on entirely new mechanics and embedded that into that world. And another thing, while you could argue that Tears of the Kingdom being a direct sequel was a bad thing for some people because they wanted something to feel more fresh and new, it's not common for there to be a direct sequel that takes place in the same world and they spend years to try and remix it and change up as much as possible. That's a rare thing. So I'm not sure I really agree with that, Truth Bomb, that Zelda was more unique and original in the past. I think they're doing more now than they did in the past. Is it a different direction? Yes. Is it a direction that maybe you don't like? You seem to be suggesting so, and I think those are fair points. But I don't think it's fair to say that the current iterations of Zelda aren't unique or original. I think they're more so than prior entries.
Tears of the Kingdom is a groundbreaking game, and it left a lot of AAA developers in shambles because they couldn't put together these types of games. Like, think about all the. So they have an icon for every fused item, and there's dozens of weapons and hundreds of items you can fuse. So they made icons for all of that. And then Ultra Hand with all the physics, the sophisticated engine, and all this, and the huge world. And it's all on Switch, which is a toaster. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then we haven't seen them move past Switch hardware, so what they can do with Switch 2 and that power, we're gonna see some new stuff being enabled from that. So we haven't seen what they can do with Switch 2 yet, so it's hard to say what the next open world is gonna be, because I think it's just gonna be completely different. But of course, we're gonna talk about that later.
That's what makes me excited about Switch 2, is not like getting The Matrix Awakens or any of that. I could play that on my PS5. What makes me excited is what Nintendo could do with powerful hardware.
Exactly. Yeah, the Matrix Awakens demo is just cool because it means that those features can be used in Nintendo games, right? It's like I probably won't play that many third-party games on my Switch, but those first-party games getting those kinds of features, that's what's really exciting, and that's why I buy Nintendo consoles, for those first-party games. So
I'll say, when it comes to third-party games, something that turns me off a bit. Like, as Giancarlo brings up in the chat, Red Dead Redemption 2 has been rated for Switch. It's great that's been rated. Maybe that means that it's actually coming down the road. But I guess I don't know.
On the original Switch,
I guess if it's running on Switch natively, it's probably not going to look or play amazing. So I just
look like The Witcher 3.
I don't like third-party games that clearly look blurry and messy compared to their other versions on Switch. There are some Switch third-party games that look and run good, but a lot of them that are like the big AAA ones, they look gimped, and that kind of turns me off from playing them on Switch. But with Switch 2, I have an optimism that they're going to look and play pretty well. I'm not saying they have to be the definitive version, but they need to look comparable. And if they look comparable, then when you factor in the fact that they are handheld versions, they become arguably the most valuable version. And that makes it really worth it for people. It would make it more worth it for me, right? Like,
for people who like to play in handheld mode.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I like to play in handheld mode sometimes. So, I look at, but I play more on the TV, right? So for me, it would be kind of like, if I'm going to get the game, I might as well play it elsewhere. But on Switch 2, there's an argument to be made that I should get it for Switch 2. And I haven't. I know it's bad. But I am still meaning to go and play Elden Ring. I'm still meaning to go back and play Resident Evil 4 Remake. I really want to play those games, and I haven't yet. But if they come out for Switch 2, I for sure will. Say it again?
Yeah. The Resident Evil 4 Remake DLC just dropped, and it's awesome. I played it.
They're making a PSVR 2 version of that game too, which looks amazing.
Yes, this holiday.
That's exciting stuff. It's more reason for me to eventually go play those games. But on Switch, if they release a Switch 2 version, I'll probably get it. That because then it would be the most valuable. That to me, that would feel like the definitive version, because it would be comparable to the other versions and also be portable, which adds a lot of value, depending on your play style. Moving on.
Wish we had more than 24 hours in one day, then we could play everything.
Yeah,
true.
I'd be better off with 36. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, 36 hours would be great.
Try staying up
that
that long every day, though.
Well, yeah, that it's tough.
As far as circadian rhythm was adjusted to it.
Yeah, maybe we should all just work less. maybe the
That's the
60-hour
goal, right?
work week should become a 40 hour. For those that work 60, 80 hours, that should become the 40-hour work week, and those that work 40, 20, or I don't know. Like,
I'm
it is
buying
what it
for the
is.
32-hour work week, 4-day, 32 hours.
Yep.
Yeah. Crazy Scoth. You would need Switch to reveal this year to hit 50K. Probably. Something nuts like that would probably have to happen. We'll see. Spencer Drummer. Clickbait or not, we're all here for some entertainment and hopefully learn something along the way. It's your job to get people hyped into video too, so that stuff never bugs me.
Cool.
Thanks for feeling that way. Yeah, I mean, I do try to get, obviously you want to make videos entertaining and exciting, but I also don't want them to be misleading. It's kind of like a tough balance, right? Because
fine line.
It's because I mean, this is I would say that part of my job is to be an entertainer. So yes, you gotta entertain. It is a fine line. Giancarlo, if Nintendo actually teased Switch successor late October, early November, what do you think they're going to show in this teaser? It'll be similar to Switch teaser, or different? We'll talk about that. But I imagine they'll showcase Mario, Metroid, maybe a little bit of Zelda and Smash. Why? It's tied into the Amiibo stuff, but we'll get to that.
What else they're going to showcase? They're going to showcase the F-Zero GX remaster, and then a couple years down the road, they're going to have a new F-Zero game.
It's possible. It's definitely possible. AB James. With Princess Peach Showtime being the perfect game to put out just before Nintendo's fiscal year ends, I could see an April Switch 2 reveal, September launch. Yeah, I think that's conceivable. I would say that they can tease the Switch 2 in March, and that wouldn't really impact the Peach release. And I think it just makes sense in March just because they get it out right before the fiscal earnings. But, April to September still makes sense too. But hey, what if it's March to August or something like that? But that is currently something like that is my window, like an early year showcase and then a kind of like a late summer, early fall release. But we'll get to that a little bit later. I'll point out here. Let's see. Comments. Chrono Rig has renewed their membership, been a member for 11 straight months. Thank you for sticking around, Chrono Rig. Very much appreciated. Let's see here. Having Hope, hello there. Verum Verbi, how is Ruby? Ruby is doing good. She's hanging out with her cousin. So my brother actually went on a trip for a few weeks. He recently got engaged, and he's spending some time with his now wife-to-be, my sister-in-law's family. But they didn't take their cat, so their cat is now staying with me with Ruby. They're cousins, and yeah, they're good. They're doing good. Ruby was sleeping on my chair right before the podcast started.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, she does that. Charles Trudell, thank you for the discussions of videos of professionalism, etc. You're welcome, Charles. I'm glad I can offer that. All right, let's see here. Oh, look at this. Korok Seed Jr. has renewed their membership as well. Thank you for sticking around, buddy. Very much appreciated. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Lex, Andres, could it be possible for the Switch 2 to be less powerful in handheld mode, but when plugged into the TV in console mode, it becomes more powerful like PS5? So that's pretty much how the Switch works, right? So the Switch, but I guess the big question is, how much can it power up to? Because the way the Switch works, so, and there was some confusion about this when the Switch came out, because there were the patents for this thing called the supplemental computing device, and the idea is that it's like a box that powers up another device even more so, a console, right? So some people were thinking when the Switch came out that the dock itself had some internals that improved the power of the Switch, a supplemental computing device. But that's not how it worked. How it worked was the Switch has its power, has its chipset, its battery, and it's clocked at a certain speed in handheld mode. but when docked and plugged into an external power source that doesn't draw upon the battery, it then clocks up to a higher speed. So it then becomes more powerful and it's better at showcasing better visuals on a bigger TV. That's how the Switch currently works. What you're suggesting is basically the exact same concept. Instead of relying on the battery, they can rely on an external power source, so they don't have to worry about battery power consumption as much, and they'll clock up with, and it'll run better and be more powerful.
Yeah.
They can do that, but will it be as powerful as a PS5? And that, well, no. The answer is no.
Yeah.
But
Power.
it gets confusing because we're seeing a lot of things indicating that the Switch 2 is going to produce visuals, or what I've been saying, produce a visual impact that's in the conversation of the current gen platforms, PS5 and the Xbox Series. But what does that mean exactly? We do not know that answer yet, right?
Yeah.
But we do have the rumor that the Switch 2 was able to get Final Fantasy, like on a developer was able to port over Final Fantasy VII Remake onto Switch, the updated version, right? The enhanced version of Final Fantasy VII Remake, not the base PS4 one, but the better looking version that runs on PS5, something like that. And it looked comparable, and they were able to do it very quickly. So that bodes well. We've heard that there's a tech demo. Now, this wasn't running from the system itself, but a computer that's meant to emulate the specs of the Switch 2, and it was running the Unreal Engine 5 tech demo with ray tracing effects that were comparable, if not better, than the PS5 version. That doesn't mean that it's better than the PS5, but at least in terms of ray tracing, it showcased that effect better years later, right? Like as the years advance, right? And that's kind of another kind of interesting, I guess, nuance to this conversation, is that it's not just about how much raw power is in there. It's also about how developers take advantage of that power, and then the different like technologies involved that also help to push that power, right? So like for example, as generations go on, developers learn how to take advantage of systems better and better, right? Like there are Switch games now that are doing things that were not being done on Switch back in 2017. And that extends not just to the Switch itself, but just systems in general, right? Like developers get smarter at utilizing their systems, right? So
yeah,
I guess what I'm saying is that as more time goes on and developers get smarter, as technologies advance, we find more and more ways to do things efficiently. We can get more done with less power.
Yeah.
So will Switch 2 games look as good as PS5 games? We still don't have that answer. But what we're hearing is that it's probably going to look better than prior gen systems. And where it falls in that window is what we're trying to kind of figure out. But I think
I've been in ballpark I've been in is Switch 2 is going to be closer to PS5 in terms of visual impact, like you say, than Switch was to PS4. The gap is going to be smaller, especially considering we're starting to see like much better can graphics get, you know.
Yeah, this year has been great for Switch graphics. We've seen Metroid Prime remastered, Pikmin 4.
Yes.
So those
Tears
are both
of the Kingdom,
ones.
you know, I know some people aren't as high on Tears of the Kingdom visuals, but when
The
you account
technical
for
nature of it,
right, when you account for everything going on in the world, it is pretty impressive for Switch. I mean, even though it's not coming out this year, the trailer for Thousand Year Door, I'd say, looks pretty good.
oh yeah, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, so I mean, we have some good looking stuff. Hey, I mean, even the Splatoon 3 side order looks pretty good too.
And Princess Peach, Showtime.
Yeah,
it's really good too. Her model is exceptionally good.
Oh yeah, like it's like, I don't want to say it's movie quality, but it kind of reminds me of like next level games, Luigi's Mansion 3.
Yeah,
like the animation
looks very
just
Pixar.
Like superb. Yeah, for sure. Let's see here.
One quick note just to end that about the Switch potentially having better ray tracing than the PS5. It kind of makes sense, as you were saying. Like technology advanced. Like Unreal Engine 5 has gone through a ton of updates, so it's a much newer, probably much more refined version. But also, Nvidia has always been the leader in ray tracing performance. If you stack up cards that sometimes AMD even outperforms in games that don't have ray tracing, where you turn ray tracing on, and all of a sudden that card that was a little bit slower is now twice as fast as the AMD equivalent. They've always been way faster with ray tracing, so it may be possible that the ray tracing acceleration in Switch is actually better, or maybe comparable to PS5.
Pros and cons.
Yeah,
There's some things better, some things worse.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nvidia's like software stuff is pretty far ahead of AMD's.
Yeah.
And that's what's gonna push Switch 2 over to, like, don't get me wrong, like the system's not gonna be super powerful. It's probably gonna be like a PS4 in handheld mode, like the rumors say.
Which
I
I
don't
think
see
is
how
pretty
they could
good.
like. Yeah, I don't see how they
Oh,
could
yeah.
make an Asus ROG Ally while making it 400 with good battery life. It's just not
No.
gonna happen.
I mean, that thing pulls, if you want to actually pull any kind of good performance, pulls like 25 watts. It's like an hour and a half of battery life. That's not acceptable.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're gonna aim for like 3 hours with Switch 2.
I think they're gonna aim for the same kind of 10-watt budget, which is
I
what
have-
the Steam Deck aims for. It's like 10 and 15.
I'll be disappointed if the Switch 2 has weaker battery power than the original Switch.
I think it's well, than the original. I think it would be comparable to that, but it will definitely be worse than the revisions in the OLED.
I'm not
I think that's just
necessarily.
inevitable.
Yeah.
Unless it just has a way bigger battery somehow.
I mean, well, it does have supposedly has a bigger screen, so it may have some more space to fit something bigger. But obviously, there's a lot of factors to take into consideration.
Oh, yeah.
On this one note, I'll say this, and it kind of goes with what Samuel is saying. What we've sort of heard seems to strongly suggest that we're getting a very customized chipset for Switch 2. Like, I don't think many people are debating that, and that alone, I would say, is going to make a big difference, because with Switch 1, we basically got like a stock Tegra X1. There were minimal changes and adaptations.
All they
for
did
the
is
Switch.
downclock it slightly, and then disable certain features that they didn't need.
So like
Other than
it looks
stock.
like they put a lot more time into the research and development for Switch 2. Like, it was almost kind of like the Switch was more like almost like a proof of concept in terms of the tech.
Yeah.
And
They have
what we're
so
gonna
much
get with
raw
this is gonna
materials.
be like the proper
Yeah, they have.
like vision of what they would like. It's gonna be like the mastery of what the Switch is, if that makes any sense. Like, it's gonna be them pulling together all the research and be like, hey, this is what can be done. So I do think, to Sam's point from earlier, that maybe with Switch 2, the gap between Switch 2 and PS5 Series X is going to be smaller than the gap was between Switch, PS4, and Xbox One. I think that is likely.
I mean, yeah, fake 4K still looks pretty close to 4K. Like, I've tinkered around with DLSS on my computer, and it's almost like magic.
It really is.
Yeah, it's pretty good. They just put a couple AI cores there, and it does a lot for you. It's really cool.
Yeah. But I want to move on with the chat here. So Spencer Dummer, next Zelda, you get to get Ganondorf, and you have to play as him with his abilities and jack up Link until like 3 hearts. Then it goes to a mandatory cutscene and goes back to Link. So you play as Ganondorf to mess up Link. That's definitely a.
That would be epic, but I highly doubt that they would do something like that. But I mean, I would like it.
Interesting. It's interesting.
It could be fun.
Yeah. Smash Brothers. Joycey J. Good evening. Like some have already said, I also like to switch to in-game discussion videos. You keep up with the news and rumors so I don't have to. I'll do my best. Thank you. Let's see here. Lex, unpopular opinion. I don't really care about how it runs. I'm fine with how my Switch runs. I have an Xbox too, though, so I could just play other games on that if needed. Yeah, I mean, some people
Sure.
just like their Switch to play Nintendo games and play some games on the go, and that's it. They don't care about power.
I will say
And
this. I want a Switch 2 to come out, and I want more power, but I'm not gonna like stop playing Nintendo games if it's just a Switch forever. I have a Nintendo console for the games.
yeah, I mean, if
Yeah.
Nintendo just released and this never came out with another system, as annoying as that would be, I would still play the games on Switch as long as they're fun and fresh. Like, I'm not gonna stop. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do think that they're definitely holding themselves back by only making games on Switch. I think there's so much more they could accomplish. But
oh yeah,
if they don't move on, they won't be able to accomplish it.
especially with how good they are with optimizing for their hardware.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, AB James, I can only imagine what the next 3D Mario is going to look like. It might actually blow us away on Switch 2. Oh, it's going to blow us
Oh
away.
yeah.
It's going to blow us away. Mario Odyssey blows me away. Just thinking about how that game is on Switch, like that.
Yeah.
Mario Odyssey is incredible. What they could do,
Yeah.
like, man. So I gotta tell you this, right? While I'm not a big Horizon fan, I think visually Horizon is just a stellar series.
Oh yeah.
Like, and Horizon's
Especially Forbidden
they've
West.
made a lot of comparisons to Zelda with Horizon, and I just gotta say that if the Zelda team had a PS4 level of power, which is able to produce visuals like Horizon, I can only imagine what the Zelda team could do with that. Like, it would just blow my mind. Yeah. So I think Nintendo will do
even
well
more
with that kind of
power.
power. Yeah, with potentially even more. Yeah. Let's see here. We got a super chat from Taker610. Thank you very much for the super chat. Now that they've nuked again, literally, what if the next Zelda game featured the most recent Link in a new world and featuring a new central villain? Interesting.
I'll tell you this right now. I think Ganondorf is not going to be in the next game. I think it's going to be someone else. I don't know what someone else is. Maybe it's a whole new villain. Maybe Vadi makes a return. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
I
I
don't
think they'll mix it up.
I don't know, because I think the part of the problem is that by the time we see the next Zelda game, it's gonna be so long that it'll still feel fresh.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
They're going to bring back Ganondorf at some point, They always will. We thought Twilight Princess was the end for him.
No, I never thought that. I never thought it was the end. It's never the end. Never.
No.
But I am okay with the game not having Ganondorf.
Yeah, I want the next game to not be in Hyrule, not with Ganondorf. I want all new stuff.
Yep.
I want a Majora's Mask level of crazy, new, wacky places.
I guess I'm just kind of thinking, like, if you have a game without Ganondorf, well, okay, you could have a game without Ganondorf, but like without Ganon, like any form of Ganon, right? Because Breath of the Wild had Calamity Ganon, like it's still based off, Ganon. Like I guess what I'm kind of like thinking about is, can there be a sort of like a game where it takes place in a different place, it's with Link, like, do you even have Princess Zelda? Because if it's not in Hyrule, why have Zelda? Because she's a princess of Hyrule. And then also, why would Link not be in Hyrule? So I wonder, I mean, a few different ways it can be done. One, if it takes place after a already kind of existing series, like continuity, right? So for example, let's say they make Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom into a true trilogy, where these characters of Link and Zelda, this version of Link and Zelda, are relevant in the next game. then I can envision them going to a place that's outside of Hyrule that would make sense. But let's say they start anew, like it's just a different timeline, different continuity, and it's a new iteration of Link. Do you do that? Is there a way to do that from scratch without there being a Hyrule? Like, I don't know if they've ever done that before. Like, I'm trying to think, have they ever gone outside of Hyrule? Well, Oracle of Ages and Seasons. No, that's still a version of Hyrule, right?
It's
Oh
Holodrum and Labyrinth.
yeah, I think they're just different places.
They're outside of Hyrule.
Problem is,
But is that an original Link?
Yeah, or no, that's Link to the Past Link, I think.
Okay, so he already has a history. So that's, I guess they could be interesting is maybe they could have a Zelda that does take place. It kind of follows the story of another Link. Like maybe the Hero of Time Link makes a return, but this time it's in a different land. And obviously it would be a new art style or something.
We see depressed Hero of Time near the end of his days. He's like 50, 60 years old.
That would be epic, but I don't think they're going to do something like that.
I don't want them to do something like that.
Wasn't it confirmed that that's how he went out? Like he was like forgotten about?
Yeah.
Sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't think they're going to let us play that part, though.
In Twilight Princess, we know he lives a long time and dies in battle because he's a Stalfos that trains you. So
yeah,
true. There's
yeah,
a retcon right there.
Yeah. Moving on though.
Yeah. It
Everyday
feels like
man's review with a little tip. Thank you for the tip. Very much appreciated. What are you saying, Sam?
But yeah. I think the next 3D Zelda will be in Hyrule because they go to new regions in 2D Zeldas. It feels like, other than Majora's Mask. Termina was the one non-Hyrule 3D Zelda, unless you count like Wind Waker. Which I suppose Wind Waker is like new Hyrule, right?
Yeah.
But it's just above old Hyrule.
Yeah.
Right. It's the mountaintops of Hyrule.
It's definitely a Hyrule that's been through a significant transformation. And I mean maybe that's what they could do. I've talked about this concept before, right? Like you can return to Hyrule. And what's interesting about the Zelda series is that we already have a very clear understanding that there is a long, long history. The history's so long that there have been extremely advanced civilizations that have been forgotten by history, and then it's really archaic, really advanced again, then archaic again, right? Like it's kind of like this cycle of advanced and not so advanced. So I don't know what point in the timeline would be, but at some point in the timeline where maybe like the cities are super futuristic, but outside the cities, the world is very old. And you have giant trees, giant plant life. It's super exotic and dangerous. So you have like this huge contrast, and you still have a massive world to explore, but it feels bigger than ever before, and it can give you a really good mix of both, right? Because out in the wild, you can still find those ancient ruins and temples, but then if you go to the cities, it's all super advanced and futuristic. Like that would be something that would feel different for the Zelda series.
That'd be awesome.
That I think would be really cool, and it could still technically be Hyrule. But it would just be in a timeline where it's super advanced civilization, but also some really old civilization left over. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, because Fallout's a very barren wasteland, and then you have like New Vegas, and it's like super, booming. And then
I guess. But the
difference
difference here is that it wouldn't be a barren wasteland; it would just be nature that's kind of overrun everything.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. A nuke didn't hit Hyrule. No.
Although that would also be an interesting idea.
It would?
A Hyrule with a Fallout. But I guess the problem I would have with that, though, is that that's kind of the storyline for Breath of the Wild. It's not a nuke, per se. It's Calamity Ganon. But the idea of Calamity Ganon is that it's kind of like a post-apocalyptic Hyrule, right? Like a lot of people died there wasn't a lot of civilization left over. And so that was kind of like a good excuse to not have a lot of towns and characters to interact with in this large world. If they did that again, I'd be a little annoyed because now they definitely have the horsepower to give us a game that can have a lot more towns and characters to interact with. So if they come up with a story contrivance so we don't get that, I would be a little annoyed, but obviously it depends on how it's done. So
yeah, I
but
love a more explored, immersive nature along with those big cities. It's got the cogs turning in my mind right now.
yeah, there's a lot of potential, I think. All right, so I'm going to read a couple more chats, and then I'm not going to dwell on them for too long, and then we're going to get into our big topic, or little topic, then big topic. All right, so Lex, Andres, aren't Phantom Hourglass and Link's Awakening outside of Hyrule? So
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah, Link's Awakening is
Yes.
Koholint, and Phantom
Yes.
Hourglass is the sea.
But the difference with those is that it's a link that's been used in a prior game. So
True.
I guess my point was that if we get a game like that, it would maybe use a link that has a past, like in Phantom Hourglass, like in Link's Awakening, which I'm okay with. Although I would miss not having Princess Zelda involved, so I'd hope they still find a way to get her involved.
I mean,
I like
the,
having Link and Zelda being both really important pieces to the story.
If they use a prior
the-
Link and Zelda, they could just team up, just tag along.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tears of the Kingdom Zelda completely like blew me away with the character development. Because Zelda Skyward Sword on has gotten a lot of character development more so than prior. Twilight Princess, she kind of just makes a few appearances, but in Tears of the Kingdom, for example, she really felt like the star of the show. She was the reason that Link won, you know.
Yeah. It definitely she made a big difference. I don't want to dwell on this right now because I want to get to the topics though. It's a good we'll circle back to this because I think it's an interesting consideration with the Zelda topic, but we'll get to that after the Q&A. Giancarlo, what if Nintendo did a Final Fantasy VII I guess remake and do a fully Magitech Hyrule? Let's do it. Sure. I'm okay with that. Yes, of having hope. Satoru March is part of the background music for tonight's podcast.
So good.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, maybe it's amazing.
It's always good. Everyday Man's Review. Do you think Nintendo will reveal the Switch 2 in October? We're going to talk about that tonight. I think there's a chance. I'm not going to bet money on it, but I think there's a chance. Joyce J. I also want a game one day that brings all the links together for one epic showdown with some kind of insane evil. That'd be fun. Next Hyrule
Spider-Man,
Warriors.
No Way Home, Zelda-fied.
Oh, what if? That's gonna be the movie.
Yep.
That'd be funny.
Yeah, that's the Zelda movie. All 15,000 links come together.
So, and that's how Nintendo gets away with choosing a voice actor. They choose several, so people can just gravitate towards one, and whichever is more popular, that's the link they use moving forward. What if
we're gonna see Tom Holland as Link?
Oh my god.
Yeah. What if?
Could definitely happen, to be honest.
I'm not that. I don't know. Well, I'll judge. My take is I'll judge the work. I won't judge until I see the work. So
That's the same thing I did with the Mario movie.
And I thought Chris Pratt did a fine job. I had no problem with him being the voice of Mario.
Yeah, Chris Pratt did actually fit like the Brooklyn origins of Mario. Like it worked. Just think about like Charles Martinet voicing the whole movie. It wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, and something else that people brought up is they felt like Chris Pratt's version of Mario was like a weird amalgamation of him, an Italian accent, and a Brooklyn accent, which they thought didn't make any sense. But once you watch the Mario movie, you're like, oh, wait. They're an Italian family that now lives in Brooklyn. So it does make sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, Charles Chanel asks me, Hyrule is chaotic enough that a big advance in tech with complete nature overrun outside of cities can happen. Yeah, I think that would be a really good setting, but we'll see what the future holds. We're going to talk more about that in a moment, actually, because it's related to what direction we think the next open world Zelda can go in. But before we do that, let me kind of talk about this topic here real quick. It's like a mini topic. So yes, Hideki Kamiya, a big time developer that's behind a number of big games. I got a list here. He was the system planner for the original Resident Evil. He was the director of Resident Evil 2, the director of Devil May Cry. He did handle the original game design for Resident Evil 0. He was the director for Beautiful Joe. To handle the story for Beautiful Joe 2. He handled the voice in Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, or a part of the voice. He was a director for Okami and Bayonetta and The Wonderful 101. And he supervised Bayonetta 2, Astral Chain, World of Demons, Bayonetta 3, Bayonetta Origins. He's done a lot.
I did.
But he's now stepping away from... Go on.
I did not know he directed Devil May Cry and Resident Evil as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge back catalog.
He used to work for Capcom. He worked for Capcom before becoming a part of I think at the time they were called Seeds, and then they changed the name to Platinum Games. And then they did a bunch of games together, and now Hideki Kamiya is moving away from Platinum Games. So, yeah. Oh, by the way, Hideki was also a director for Scalebound, which was canceled. But it's believed that some elements of Scalebound went into Bayonetta 3, which is why we saw like the giant kaiju demons. But yeah, so he's moving on. And what's interesting, this is his tweet. Let's see if I have it up. All right, so he says, as announced on the official Platinum Games X account, I will be leaving Platinum Games on October 12th, 2023. This came after a lot of consideration based on my own beliefs, and was by no means an easy decision to make. However, I feel this outcome is for the best. I will continue to create in my Hideki Kamiya way. I hope you keep your eyes peeled. So he's not retiring. He's still going to make games, but he's not going to make games with Platinum anymore. And I find that interesting. And he says here, keep your eyes peeled, and he's leaving on October 12th. So there being a specific date, I wonder if there's some sort of contractual agreement that leads to that specific date, be it because he has to leave. That's when he can leave Platinum Games, or maybe that's when he starts something else.
Yeah, I'm wondering.
Regardless,
I can announce when he's starting next.
Yeah, I suspect we'll hear about it after October 12th. I don't know if we'll hear about it immediately. It may take a few months or what have you, but it's interesting. I don't know what that is. I've heard some people speculate that maybe he's gonna start working for Nintendo. I think that's hopium. I'm not saying he won't make games for Nintendo, but I think it would be a big story if he started working exclusively for Nintendo, or vice versa if Platinum Games started working exclusively for Nintendo, because Platinum Games has made a lot of games. Like if this list I brought up to you, a lot of those games have been on Nintendo. The Resident Evil series, Devil May Cry is a no. Although I think they've imported Switch, but the original
the first three Devil May Cry games are on Switch. I don't know about the fourth one.
No, I don't know.
5 just couldn't run on Switch without a lot of work done to it.
No. Maybe it's ported to Switch too. But the Beautiful Joe series, that should get remastered to Switch, by the way. Okami was originally a PlayStation 2 game, but was ported to the Wii, and it's now on Switch as well. You got the Bayonetta games, the story behind that. The Wonderful 101 was a Wii U exclusive for a while. Astral Chain is a Switch exclusive still. Was it ported to PC? I don't know.
No,
it might have been.
I don't think so.
Okay. I'm sorry. I saw an email. I got distracted. I'm trying to send this 7 gigabyte file to somebody.
It is only on Switch.
Not uploading.
Yeah, Astral Chain has not made its way over to anything else yet.
Yeah.
And I think we'll get a sequel for that.
It's the best-selling Platinum Games product on Switch, right?
I do not know.
And it's a new IP. Yeah, I think it's sold better than Bayonetta 3. And
I'm not
Astral Chain sales.
I would be very happy to hear that, though.
I really like Astral Chain. So as of December 2022, the game has sold over 1.3 million copies worldwide. Not bad.
for a new IP and for that type of game.
Yeah, I mean, Astral Chain just looks really good. It's one of the best looking Switch games.
Yeah, I actually went through it a little bit a few years ago, around when it came out, but I never beat it. But I'm gonna beat it this year.
I beat
I've really
Bayonetta
been
3
looking
has
forward
sold
to
less
it.
than has sold more than 1 million copies, and it did that in less than 4 months. So I don't know if it's true that Astral Chain is the best selling Platinum Games product,
Yeah.
because I mean, obviously 1 million is less than 1.3, but if Bayonetta 3 did over 1 million in less than 4 months, that bodes well for it eventually passing Astral Chain. That said, regardless, Astral Chain being a new IP, that's still really good. And the way they teased Bayonetta 3, like they opened it up with it's the first look trailer, not the teaser, but the first look trailer actually showed us Bayonetta 3 gameplay. They showed off the dog from Astral Chain. And so that there's clearly like an acknowledgement. It's like, hey, like we know you know about this series. Like at first they made us think it wasn't your Astral Chain, but they're like, nope, it's Bayonetta 3. And the way Astral Chain ended, like I still think there's gonna be an Astral Chain 2, especially because it has had strong sales for what it is.
The story
So,
was
yeah.
not over at the end of the game.
And I guess what some people may be concerned about,
story? How was it for Astral Chain 2? Because I've heard some gripes about the story being mid.
I thought it was really good.
not mid.
It's not something that's gonna blow your mind or
I
anything,
mean,
but
it's
good.
Mid would be an insult. Like it's good.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's like
yeah,
the
I've been
best thing.
1.5, 8 out of 10.
Yeah,
kind of story.
it's a good. It's good. Like you play the game for it's an action game. You play it for the action, right? But it's definitely
Yeah.
It's not. It's better than Fast and Furious.
I
Okay?
did enjoy
you
the
don't
story.
play. You don't play Devil May Cry for the deep plot. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Astral Chain story is not bad. Like that's maybe not why you play it. You don't play it for the story, but it's not bad story. Anyway, what I wanted to say though is that some people may be concerned about the future of Astral Chain and Bayonetta. Like I think it's worth noting that Bayonetta 2, Astral Chain, Bayonetta 3, and Bayonetta Origins, all those games were supervised by Hideki Kamiya, but he wasn't the lead guy directing any of the recent entries. Actually, like he hasn't directed a game since like the Wii U era. Interestingly, I mean, he's supposedly directing something now, but we don't know what it is. So, yeah, I wouldn't be too worried about like future Platinum Games products, but I am also interested to see what Hideki Kamiya is working on himself. And I guess we'll find out soon. Well, relatively soon. Do you guys have any other thoughts on this one?
Yeah. Seems like he did a lot for Platinum Games, so it'll be interesting.
Probably is a big deal
to see. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see where they go from here. If if they have like a successor trained, I'm sure they did. Because I'm sure they knew about this for a while.
I mean, like I said, he's been in a supervisor role for basically a decade for most of his projects. So they've had someone else at the lead for a lot of these projects. I think Platinum Games is gonna get by just fine without him.
Yeah,
I think they've been prepared for this for a long time. So I'm not too worried about it.
This is a Kojima situation. I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. It just could be, they're moving in different directions. That's totally fine. But let's now move on to our big topics. We got 2 big topics. And I'm trying to decide which one we should do first. I think we should talk about the Switch 2 teaser first. Yes. We're going to do that one first because I want to put up a poll. So. I want to put up a poll and have the poll run throughout the rest of the show. So let me put up that poll. And maybe you can change your answers as we talk about this. That might make it kind of interesting. Will there be a Switch 2 teaser before the end of the year? Okay, that's a question. That's not a poll. right. Start a poll. Wait until the poll comes. Will there be a Switch 2 teaser before the end of the year? All right, start poll. And please, I encourage you to be willing to change your mind as we talk about this. That way you can see a little bit more of like an ebb and flow, a back and forth.
I have a lot to talk about considering this.
All right.
Yeah.
But first, let me kind of explain the circumstances, and then you guys can jump in, okay? And feel free to add details after. So, there's a theory going around. This is coming from Paris Spiky on Family Boards. This person has a history of tracking the amiibo restocks. And historically, whenever there's kind of like a series of amiibos that are going to be restocked, it lines up with some sort of Nintendo announcement or event. For example, most recently, we knew that there was going to be a Sora amiibo restock. So there is an expectation that it would be announced really soon. It would line up with some sort of major event. And that was the case. The Nintendo Direct. And also, because of the amiibo restock, that there would have to be an update to Smash Ultimate. And there will be. But just for the Sora amiibo, so it can be compatible. It didn't mean, that means Fighters Pass Volume 3, it's happening, baby. Like, it didn't mean that. But it did line up with a major Nintendo Direct, and there does have to be at least a small update for the compatibility of the Sora amiibo. But amiibo restocks have been for other events in the past as well. But the crazy thing, and I don't remember the exact dates, I'll have to pull up the post, but basically there are a series of amiibo. I want to say the date's November 10th, but don't quote me on that. It's early November. And there's supposed to be a number. You know what? Maybe I should just pull up the actual post and show you guys. Give me a second.
Sounds good.
Let me pull the post. All right, let's see here. Or at least I want to give you the dates. Okay. I'm going to find this. Okay,
I got a
Siri thinks
crazy
I'm talking
idea.
about what?
I have a idea. So, have you heard about the
No.
Google and Nintendo VR collaboration? It came out like a couple weeks ago. It's rumored, but supposedly Google's collaborating with Nintendo on a VR headset standalone. So it could be something somewhat like PSVR 2 or something.
Yeah, they are working on something. Anyways, I found the post. Okay. So, it is November 10th. There is a number of amiibo that are slated for November 10th. So there's a Metroid line of amiibo that are supposed to come out November 10th. There are several Link amiibos or Zelda amiibos coming November 10th. There is a number of Mario amiibos coming November 10th. Wedding Mario, Peach, Bowser, Rosalina, Boo. Wave 2 of the Smash series is supposed to be restocked on November 10th. So there's Smash amiibo getting restocked on November 10th, Mario amiibo getting restocked on November 10th, Zelda amiibo getting restocked on November 10th, and Metroid amiibo getting restocked on November 10th. That's a lot of amiibo set for restocks on November 10th. And that's kind of the crux of this theory, that because amiibo have always been lined up for major announcements, given that there's this many amiibo that are scheduled for restock, which is a lot of amiibo for some big franchises from Nintendo, there's a speculation that this could line up with a Switch 2 event. Now, some other things to note. Apparently, the Mario Kart bundle and the Animal Crossing Light bundles are released on October 6th, which is earlier than usual. And
it's so peculiar.
Yeah, apparently Nintendo has said they want to celebrate the holidays early. So why would they want to celebrate the holidays early? Well, some speculation is that maybe they're going to announce something about a month after these bundles come out, close to around when the amiibos are getting restocked, and also maybe shortly before Nintendo's earnings release, that perhaps there's a big sort of event that happens. It may impact sales somewhat, which would be a Switch 2 teaser. And we're already past the point where there could be a whole bunch of major Nintendo Directs, so it can't be a Direct. So that's kind of most of it. Now there's other little things we can get to, like apparently Nintendo has announced a few more Nintendo Lives to happen in different parts of the world. But this is after the release for Mario Wonder. So what are they trying to advertise with these Nintendo Lives? And yeah, so that's kind of the theory, right? That it really just comes down to the amiibo restocks. Now, my kind of speculation on this is that, well, I mean, it's the holidays, so maybe they're just restocking amiibo for the holidays. But they haven't done this every year. So
yeah, I was just gonna say, do they usually do amiibo restocks?
Not like this. So
yeah, there's something fishy going on. It feels like the stars are lining up a little too much for there not to be something going on in November. These Switch Lite bundles, and considering it's Switch Lite bundles, that's also weird. It feels like they're trying to clear out stock of those.
One other thing I should mention is that recently the amiibos have changed the way they look in the back. They're not Switch specific anymore. So, you know, there's that.
Yeah.
And I will say that this year, starting this year, every Nintendo Direct has, with the title, has the added dash with Nintendo Switch. But all before 2023, all Nintendo Directs would just say Nintendo Direct and the date. Now Nintendo Directs say Nintendo Direct with the date dash Nintendo Switch. Implied there could be a Nintendo Direct that isn't just about the Switch. So it's interesting. So what do you guys think? Do you think this means a Switch 2 teaser? Do you think it might mean a Switch 2 teaser, or do you think it's a load of baloney?
Okay, so before this September Nintendo Direct, I felt like Switch 2 had almost a 0% chance of getting announced this year. But then I watched the Direct, and I came out of it satisfied with the things I was shown. But I was thinking, that's a lot of ports. This feels like the last Switch Direct. And assuming they keep the schedule with their next Direct being in February, I don't think they're going to announce a new system in January. That would burn a lot of people, and that would cause a lot of backlash. I think, therefore, a November announcement almost makes more sense than a February announcement, or a January-February announcement. And they could price drop the Switch. Let's say drop the Switch Lite to like $150 and bundle
for
a game
these
with
holidays?
it.
I mean, for these holidays.
They would have done that already.
Right.
That's also a situation.
They've already announced the bundles, so I don't see a price drop happening until next year.
They've announced their Black Friday bundles and the pricing already.
Yeah, so I don't see a price drop happening this year. I don't think that's gonna happen.
You think they can announce Switch 2 this year and not price drop the Switch?
Yeah, they can wait a little bit. I don't see why not.
Yeah.
Honestly, they could wait till like pre-orders are available for the system.
Yeah.
True. And pre-orders would be all right, let's say they announce Switch 2 in November. That would imply a first half release. Because it's not like they're going to announce it in November.
Yeah.
It's going to come out in the second half of next year. That doesn't make sense.
I agree that if Switch 2 is announced this year, it's because it's coming out early summer at the latest. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means it will, but I do agree that if Nintendo wants the Switch 2 to come out, say like May or June, they're putting out at least a teaser of it, like a big public teaser, before the end of this year. I agree with that.
Yeah, I think also what they could do is so they could have the teaser in November, and they could skip having a normal direct in February and do a Switch 2 presentation or something of that sort, along the lines of what they did for Switch, and then pre-orders open, and then they do the price drop. I could see that.
What do you think, Brandon?
Yeah, I don't think they'll have pre-orders open for the first time they show it, unless it's coming like very, very soon. But it might be available. I don't know. But I think they'll probably do like a teaser event, and this year if they do one, if they show anything, and then do a bigger event next year to like show everything, and then that's when a pre-orders will be available. But yeah, if they show it off this year, then that means it'll probably come out like early summer next year.
Yeah, so something to consider is that typically the first showcase of something from Nintendo, the game or hardware is not up for pre-order immediately, right? Like, in just a good example, I mean, there's actually sometimes even when we see them twice, they're still not put it for pre-order. It really comes down to how close we are to release. But like, for example, Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, not up for pre-order yet. It's announced. We can look at it on the website, but we can't pre-order it. Princess Peach Showtime, we can pre-order it. But when it was showcased in June, we could not pre-order it. I think the same kind of goes to systems as well, right? When the Switch was initially teased, I mean, I'm sure you might be able to pre-order on Amazon or Best Buy or something, right, with like a placeholder. But like straight from Nintendo, there won't be a pre-order. I mean, you could technically pre-order Metroid Prime 4, but not through Nintendo, through Amazon or something.
Yeah,
I will
and those are all like
say,
prices subject to change and stuff.
yeah, they could open pre-orders like very, very close to release because that's what they did to Switch. It was just 2 months before release, so
They'll
yeah,
do
they
it
can announce it this year.
when they kind of showcase everything about the system, and
Yeah,
a
like
teaser
is
wouldn't
it region
be
locked?
yeah.
Yeah.
So a teaser wouldn't be a showcase for the entire system. A teaser would be, I would say at most basically what we got for the Switch teaser. And so someone was asking in the chat, I'm sorry, I missed who. Who was it? Sorry, I'm doing the podcast. But I'll answer the question though. Like the window between Switch being teased to coming out, this is it. So on October, I want to say 20th, the Switch teaser came out. Switch first look. Let me double check that. It was October 20th. It was October 20th, 2016. And then the Nintendo Switch presentation was in January. What was the exact date? March 25th.
I think it was.
No, that's
yeah.
a lie. That is not true.
No,
What are you
that's
doing?
after
What are
the
you doing?
Switch
Google
came out.
search. Right. No, the Switch came out March 3rd. So the event was January 13th. It looks like.
Yeah, so it was just like practically a month and a half before the Switch came out.
So so October 20th, we had the teaser for Switch. Then less than 2 months later, we had the full-scale Nintendo Switch presentation. And then less than 2 months after that, they released the Switch on March 3rd. So that was a very quick window. October to December. Well, actually, no. It was more than 2 months from October 20th to January 13th. That's
it was a month and 3 weeks.
It was 2 months. October 20th to November 20th, right? It's 1 month. December 20th.
Oh yeah.
So it's 2 months and 3 weeks.
Yeah, I just don't know how to do math.
Yeah. Well, I skipped November. I wiped November from the record for a moment there. Anyway, so that it was less than a 6-month window is the main point. So can Nintendo do the same thing again? I would say that it's easy. It would be easier now to do shorter than a 6-month window than before because the Switch was an entirely new thing. They had a lot more marketing to do. People understand what Switch is. So when Nintendo introduces the Switch 2, assuming it's a similar system, there's not going to be that much confusion. So if I think worst case scenario, like the window would be comparable to Switch 1. It wouldn't be like a lot more. If anything, it could be less. So if Nintendo were to showcase it, say November, right? I think the implication would be that it doesn't come out in March, but it comes out maybe April or May. And what's weird about that is that Nintendo released Tears of the Kingdom this May. And that was a bit of a head scratcher for people because typically we see them put out their big releases to close out the fiscal year in March. But instead, Nintendo did what came out in March? Bayonetta Origins.
Yeah, that was their big
Which was
fiscal
announced
year
at the Game Awards. And what's also weird about this is that apparently Tears of the Kingdom was done the year before, and they just spent all this time polishing it up, getting it ready. Like, they probably could have released Tears of the Kingdom in March, but instead they allowed Bayonetta Origins to be the fiscal year closer. So it's interesting they did that, and I wonder why they did that. Is it because maybe they just wanted to balance out their financials between two different fiscal years? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe they just thought that May would be a really interesting time. Maybe it had something to do with kind of pacing the excitement of Nintendo between their major releases. Maybe it had more to do with that, right? Maybe they felt like if they released Tears of the Kingdom in March, and then us having to wait all the way into the holidays for Mario Wonder would have been too much of a gap. So they tried to shorten that interval a little bit. There could be a number of different reasons why they did it. But I bring it up because Nintendo had a lot of success with Tears of the Kingdom coming out in May. Maybe they were willing to come out with a system in May, you know? Maybe in some ways they were kind of testing the waters for May as a major time for release. Now, Tears of the Kingdom software, Switch 2 is hardware.
Yeah. Very different.
Didn't the 3DS release in February?
The new
I don't know
3DS,
that
I think,
they-
released pretty early in the year.
Yeah, I think the regular one did as well.
I want to
I'm
say
not
the
sure about the
original
regular
3DS came out in March. Let me double check that. I think part of the problem is that it came out at different times in different markets, and that's where it gets confusing. So let's see here. The release date for Nintendo 3DS it came out. The original release date. This is weird. Okay, so all right. So it was announced March 2010, but it released in Japan February 2011. So you're right about that. In Europe, America, and Australia, March 2011. So
yeah, I feel like
that's different.
Yeah, I feel like releasing a Switch 2 in a low traffic period like spring to summer could actually work to Nintendo's benefit for a few reasons. One, the system's going to sell out no matter what. Wii U sold out. Two, they could build up a good library of games for the holiday like they did for Switch, so they don't just have a couple games to work with for holiday sales. They'll hit on all fronts, like 2017, I believe, if they do release it at that time. I still think late 2024 is what I would bet money on, if you were to tell me to bet money. But I don't think an earlier release is impossible, and there's multiple reasons why they should do it instead.
Well, I'll tell you this. I don't think Switch 2 is coming out. I think the very earliest we see Switch 2 release, like be out in the market publicly for people to play and buy, is April. The absolute earliest. And the reason I believe that is because I think Nintendo sort of outlined what their software lineup is. And March already includes a release of Princess Peach Showtime. Could they release new hardware in the same month as Princess Peach Showtime? They could. But I'm not betting on that.
No.
Like, Princess Peach Showtime currently is their biggest release for next year. I mean, unless you count Thousand Year Door. I mean, there's some debate there because Thousand Year Door is a big deal game, but it's a remake.
Yeah,
Princess Peach Showtime is an original release. So, I don't see Nintendo putting out a new system in March. Like, what would they launch with? Because we've heard that the launch title is supposed to be 3D Mario.
No,
I don't
March
see a
is too
scenario
grand right now.
Yeah, Well, I
Yeah.
have a hard time believing 3D Mario would come out in March when we are getting Mario Wonder in October, Mario RPG in November, we're getting WarioWare also in what, November or October, and then Princess Peach in March, and then Mario vs. Donkey Kong in February. I don't believe that. Now, maybe you don't think 3D Mario's a launch title. Maybe you could argue Prime 4. I guess, but is that really the kind of... it just doesn't seem like the best time to handle. Like, I think there's got to be spaced out a little bit more. I think they need a little bit more of a launch lineup. And
Yeah.
I don't think a cross-gen title and Princess Peach that's also on Switch would be the best lineup. I think things would have to be handled a little bit differently. So I don't think Switch 2 is coming out the absolute earliest is this April. But I'm not even going to bet on April necessarily. So, with that said,
you could argue that it could come out in June because that's the ending of their first quarter of the upcoming fiscal year, and traditionally they've actually struggled a little bit to hit estimates recently in that quarter. First quarter has been slow for them, and Switch 2 could turn that around. That could be good for investors and for stock prices.
That's one way of looking at it, but you could also argue that maybe they don't want to put their system during a historically slow time because they wanted to, hit the ground running. So, there's two different sides to that. But what I wanted to kind of get to, though, is that if the earliest I can see Switch 2 coming out is April, then I don't think we're in a scenario where Nintendo is emulating what they did with Switch 1, is my main point. So this idea of seeing a teaser in October with a short turnaround, major presentation in January, and a release in March, I don't think that's likely. Of course, the speculation is more likely a November teaser, not an October teaser, which is slightly later. So could we get a slightly later release of Switch 2 in April? It's possible, but I'm not betting on that. So if I'm gonna guess, I'm gonna say the thing. Just like think about the poll, because technically the question is, will there be a Switch 2 teaser before the end of the year? And I could say that it's not going to happen in November and still think it could happen before the end of the year because there's this little month called December.
Yeah.
And December has
There's a little event in December. Yeah.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this about that is that at the Game Awards we've seen Microsoft have the Xbox Series trailer there. Like they had a teaser for that. So could Nintendo put a teaser for their system at the Game Awards? I think they could, but some people might counter that by saying, well, Nintendo hasn't had much of a presence at the Game Awards these last few years. Why would they turn around and do it now? Well, yes, but let's take this into consideration. Nintendo was more active at the Game Awards when they were starting the release of a next generation console, when they needed their marketing to be at their absolute highest. So, is it not conceivable that perhaps Nintendo would renew their presence at the Game Awards with more stronger announcements because they're trying to market a new generation?
It's possible. I don't really expect that, just because, at least with the Xbox, we already knew that something was coming. Like, we knew that a next generation system was coming. Like, for a fact. Like, they told us, yeah, it's coming soon. I think they even told us it was coming in 2020. But I'm not sure exactly if we knew that then. But we knew for sure that there was another console, and we would see it pretty soon. It's been radio silence for Nintendo as far as the next-gen console is concerned. So it would be a different situation. I feel like it's less likely. I feel like Nintendo would want to have control over how they show the system and, in their own event.
So let me ask you guys a question. What do we think about the Amiibo restocks? Do we think it means anything at all?
It's got to mean something.
Gun to your head.
Gun to my head.
What is it?
Since these don't traditionally happen for no reason, it means something. And that something is not a Nintendo Direct, because we just had a funny little thing called a September Direct. So I think if it means something, it's going to be like a 2-minute trailer of the Nintendo Switch 2. And they're going to market it in such a way that they don't leave Switch in the dust. They're going to have Switch as the 3DS going into the Switch 2 generation,
Hmm.
and it'll get the more minor
Sure.
stuff. I'm actually of the camp that newer games.
We lose him? Oh, you're still there.
Yeah. So I'm thinking 4 is going to be cross-gen, but I don't know if much more will be. But I think games such as like Xenoblade X, etc., if those ever got brought over, those could be cross-gen because they're, ports or remasters. But that's getting off track. But yeah,
The first
I think
part of what you're saying.
2-minute
got cut
trailer.
out.
Oh,
Yeah, you cut out a lot, so I'm not sure. What were you? Can you just kind of reiterate your last 2 sentences?
Yeah, so basically what I was saying is, I think if I was to place a bet this November, we get a 2-minute trailer about Switch 2.
Okay.
And, I want to exercise caution among everybody. I don't think there's going to be a ton of cross-gen with Switch 2, aside from like ports and remasters and stuff that could run on Switch. Because I
Except
think
Prime 4.
they're going to, except Prime 4. Yeah, I think Prime 4 kind of has to be cross-gen.
Okay.
I think the Switch 2 version of Prime 4 won't simply be a 4K version of Prime 4. I think it's going to almost be Prime 4 remastered for Switch 2. It's going to look a lot better.
It's gonna have ray tracing. It's gonna be in 4K. It's gonna have the HDR. It's gonna have better draw distance, better textures. Like, yeah, I think they're actually like catering a Switch 2 version. I agree with that.
Exactly.
But Brandon, gun to your head, what do the Amiibo restocks mean, if anything? I got my idea, by the way. And spoiler alert, it's not what Sam said.
I guess, gun to my head, I would say no. But to be honest, I'm very 50-50 on whether this means anything, because I think they could tease it. I think Nintendo is looking to get the system out as soon as they have the games ready. I think the system itself is probably ready at this point, pretty much. I think they're just waiting for software. I mean, we're not sure exactly how long developers have had dev kits, but we know it's sometime this year at least. And I imagine bigger devs have had them since last year at the very least. So we're not really sure where the software is at this point. We hear from Eurogamer that Nintendo's keen to launch the system as soon as possible, and I imagine they're waiting just to have a really good lineup. So I think if they feel like they can have the games ready, then they'll do that. But I feel like they're going to wait. So I'm very 50-50 on it, and I'm not even sure if Nintendo themselves are 100% certain what they're going to do.
All right. So I just want to iterate that I do think there's a chance that we do hear about Switch 2 before the end of the year. There have been a number of insiders that have suggested it as a possibility. And I do think there is some level of reason to the idea that it does happen in November. Gun to my head, though. I don't think these Amiibo restocks are hinting at a Switch 2 announcement. That's not what I think it is. This is what I think it is.
Boy.
Remember in the Nintendo Direct how Nintendo had this very weird moment where they talked about how they're working on opening a Nintendo museum, and they had this very drab kind of like they didn't have much to show during it?
Yeah.
I think we're going to get a trailer for the Nintendo Museum, and it's going to showcase some historical things about Smash Brothers, Mario, Link, Zelda, Metroid, and that's when the Amiibo restocks are going to happen.
I can't say
that's
that
what
I
I think it
disagree
is.
with that take. Yeah.
That's what I think it is.
Yeah. It's a boring take, but it's probably right because the timeline sounds just about right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'd be kind of hyped if that's what it was, to be totally frank with you. I
kind of want to go to
be
the
totally
Nintendo
honest,
Museum.
Watching the Nintendo Direct, if you go back to the live stream, Brian and I were watching it, and
we were just like, we got to go to Japan.
We were actually excited about them talking about the museum. Like, I was one of the most exciting moments of the Direct for me, even though what they show was just a drab building.
Yeah,
so
just like a concrete building.
If we got like some actual like advertisement that was a little bit more hip or cool or colorful, I would be very excited about that. So, and I kind of feel like
It's
that
cool.
would
I
definitely
mean,
fit the amiibo restocks. Just saying.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the Nintendo Museum's cool. It has all this history. It has all this stuff that we grew up with. So yeah, it's gonna be very, very cool.
I'm gonna get shot. Gun to my head. Oh man, that's crazy. I'm scared. Oh, we're not. Obviously, it's a metaphor, figure of speech. No one's getting shot.
No,
But
what's gonna get revealed is the Nintendo Switch 4 because Switch Lite and Switch OLED were 2 and 3.
say it again.
Oh, am I cutting out again?
My brain was just not paying attention.
Well, okay. So we're gonna see the Nintendo Switch 4 revealed because it's the Switch Lite and the Switch OLED were 2 and 3.
Oh, is that so? Okay.
Yeah, and it's gonna be the power of a PS5, and it's gonna be wind docked with DLSS enabled. It's gonna look like a PS6.
All right. Yeah, that makes so much sense. So looking at the poll, it's been up for 30 minutes, and it's tied. It's 50% yes, 50% no for Switch 2, a teaser happening before the end of the year. I think there's a chance we see Switch 2 mentioned at the Game Awards. I do think that. I kind of believe that since we are going to a next generation, Nintendo will be more willing to market at the Game Awards. We'll see what happens, right? Because we've gotten our expectations really high up for the Game Awards before, only to be disappointed. A lot. It's happened year after year almost, but we'll see what happens.
It's got a chance.
Anyway.
I just don't think it's very high in my opinion.
I wanna ask a question.
Yeah.
Do you think that Nintendo, talking about the Switch 2 at the Game Awards, would burn people for holiday purchases? Or, November purchases?
Maybe. Is very close.
Yeah, there is still some time before Christmas by that time. So 'cause I think the Game Awards are December 7th, right?
If you're just teasing the system with no pricing or anything, it's a very subtle teaser, and it's coming out half a year later at earliest. I don't think it's that big a deal. I also think most people buying a Switch right now, most people, I'm sure there's exceptions out there, but most people buying a Switch right now aren't buying a Switch because they want a very expensive, powerful system. They're buying because they want to play Mario Wonder, or they want a second system for the family or for their kid. Most households already have at least one Switch, and the majority of sales for Switch right now are people getting the special editions or getting another Switch for the family or the house. So I think the announcement of a Switch 2 in December isn't going to be as negatively impactful as some people think. Let me remind you guys again that the Switch is a successor to both the 3DS and the Wii U. So what I mean by that is that while the Switch 2 is going to be Nintendo's future, there's going to be a transitional phase. The Switch is going to be relevant for a while after Switch 2. I think Switch 2 is going to be treated almost like a premier device, but they're still going to be selling Switches. It's going to be kind of like, hey, if you want more of the budget model, here's a Nintendo Switch. So I don't think that the inherent existence of the Switch 2 to the public and it's known dramatically impacts sales for Switch 1. Especially when you look at the software lineup for the second half for this year for the holidays. It's not it's not the kind of games you're like, man, if only that was in 4K being ray traced with HDR. Mario Wonder is Mario Wonder, right? It's not the same.
Yeah,
I think Nintendo was very selective about their lineup for that, in part for that reason. So I think it can happen before the end of the year. Do I think it will? That's a tough call.
I think the fact that you probably won't be able to pre-order it this year will help a lot. It's you know about it, but you couldn't have bought it anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the very earliest pre-orders would be around the time that pre-orders open for Switch in January. And if they revealed it at the Game Awards, it would be a little bit later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree. I don't think it's a huge deal if they announce the system a little late or a little early next year or whatever. I think they can announce the system whenever they want. And, the people buying Switches this late in the generation aren't going to be the hardcore early adopters of Switch 2.
Yeah. I want to point out in the chat, I don't know when Nintendo's announcing the system. I don't have any inside information on this. I don't. So
I could definitely see them teasing it this year or early next year, and then having a big event at the end of March, and that's when pre-orders go up. I think that's probably what's going to happen. I think they'll probably tease it either this year or early next year in like January, and then pre-orders will go live sometime late March when they do the big event.
Yeah, I stand by this statement. We will have official news from Nintendo on the next system before the end of March next year.
I think so.
I am 99% on that. I believe that.
Yeah, so
that's where I'm
coming
at.
Out of the coming out of the Nintendo Direct, like games like the Thousand Year Door and Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, Luigi's Mansion 2 HD specifically, I feel like that could come out before summer 2024, it being a remaster. So it does feel like they're stretching out the lineup a little bit, signifying that these are some of the last Switch games. Thousand Year Door may not even be Switch exclusive.
Oh, I think Thousand Year Door is a cross-gen title.
I think so as well. It's very good looking, and I feel like they could play with the lighting a little more with Switch 2. I think there's room for it to look even better. And also bump it up to 60 FPS because it's 30 FPS on Switch. But yeah, it feels like everything's leading up to March, and then there's nothing. There's like those, Luigi's Mansion 2 and the Thousand Year Door. So I feel like March is the time we learn more at the latest.
So I don't think is there anything dated past March? There may be something.
Nope.
Is there anything
Luigi's Mansion 2 HD is summer, but it's not a specific release time. Just summer.
Okay.
Yeah. So think about
Thousand Year
summer,
Door is just
right?
2024.
Like April and May are likely to be empty of releases, because summer starts in June.
Yeah, there may be some few things announced in like a direct mini early in the year or something, but probably not a ton of games coming out then.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna learn of a ton of like big new games. Maybe like Mario versus Donkey Kong level games. Maybe some I don't know, Pushmo or something like that.
Remasters, maybe a Kirby game.
Yeah, I'm surprised we didn't get a Kirby game in this Direct.
But... Yeah, which means we definitely got to see a Kirby game sometime, probably early next year, because there's so many Kirby games.
I'm surprised we didn't see. I was completely flabbergasted coming out of the Direct and not seeing anything from Metroid or Fire Emblem. We know Fire Emblem 4 remake's finished, so what's going on there?
Their Direct mini announcement that's in between the reveal event and the actual release of the next gen system. Another game to fill out that lineup.
So there's a title that I'm keeping my eyes peeled for, and that is Tamarindo's Freaking Dinner. It's a first-person horror game heading to Switch and Nintendo's next console. It has not released yet, and I'm trying to figure out the release window for it.
Because we did see, like, with Switch, there were some third parties, like, or smaller, like, indie studios that were like, oh yeah, we're definitely releasing a Switch version, and they had no idea what the specs was. Like, we saw this one game that was like this kid in like this open field, and it was like absolutely beautiful.
Path to Heaven or something.
Definitely like a small team. It's being published by Neo Doctrine or Neon Doctrine and the developer's Celery Emblem, if you're familiar with them at all.
So I'm not. I have no idea, but I could definitely see the scenario that they have no clue what the actual like specs are for the next system or anything, and they're just like, "Oh yeah, we're coming out. We're definitely doing it, guys. Yeah, for sure." They don't have a dev kit or anything. It's very possible. We saw a lot of that on
No,
Switch.
I think they probably have a dev kit. I think a lot of developers have dev kits at this stage. We keep hearing about dev kits. I mean, I think who was it? Was it Nishquick? I don't know if you're watching, but weren't you saying that you were at this conference recently about VR
Yes.
and you
Yeah,
talked
I
to the
talked to
person
him about it.
didn't he say that he mentioned that there is a Switch 2? He mentioned that it's not coming. That it's not about Switch 2, but like they know about it, right? Like, I guess my point is that it just kind of feels like developers know about Switch 2 already. Like they have the dev kits. It's
Yeah.
a thing.
So Nishquick was at a VR conference that they mentioned some the Google and Nintendo VR collaboration at, and it's going to be separate from Switch 2, maybe similar to how PlayStation VR is. Yeah, he's in the comments right now.
Yeah, I'm looking. Yeah. So we're not right. The point isn't to say that the VR thing is related to Switch 2. It's just that Switch 2 is being like you. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nishquick, but like when I messaged the person said that it's not about Switch 2. So the point is that like the fact that we're now having these conversations with people who are developing things, that like they have to clarify, hey, it's not for this successor system. Like the successor system is known, right? Like we've already talked about how during the Microsoft Activision FTC court case, like in the emails, next gen Switch is dropped, right? And this is emails from even like 2022. So point is that like we are absolutely in the time where developers have been talking about this and known this for a little while already. More and more devs are getting dev kits. And we're getting some games confirmed for the successor system already. And it's just kind of like, I think we are close. Now, what does close mean? I mean, holiday 2024 at the latest is kind of like where I stand on this at the latest. Yeah. I would be very surprised if it comes out 2025 at this stage with everything that we're hearing. So, not saying it can't happen. You never really know. But, yeah. Anyway, to move on, because I feel like, we could talk about this stuff forever. I don't want to say yes for sure. I don't know. I'm scared. I'm trying to decide if I'm fully committed to the idea of Switch 2 being teased before the end of the year.
I'm definitely not.
I'll flip the tables on you. Come to your head.
You want to flip a coin?
I'm scared to be wrong. The thing is, no matter which choice I pick, I'm still scared that I'm wrong. If I say no, I'll feel bad because they might show it off at the Game Awards.
All right. I'll give
you.
If
I say yes, I'll feel bad.
I'll give you a better metric.
Probably wrong.
Give me a percentage chance of each.
Okay. All right. There is a 65% chance it's not announced this year. There is a 30% chance it's announced at the Game Awards. And there's a 5% chance it's announced in November. So I guess that would mean that gun to my head, I'd probably say no. Switch 2 is not officially teased this year.
Is it 5% for November, and how much for the Game Awards?
30.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, but 65 it's for next year. Let me clarify. I'm talking about a teaser trailer. I think that we could hear like something official from a Nintendo executive, like, "Oh yeah, we're working on our next console," right? Something like there may be something like that that could happen this year. But I think more likely we're waiting until next year to get like some advertisement about this system. So
yeah,
that's
obviously the likely. Yeah, that's the likely situation. So they can have a more traditional marketing for Switch 2. Like they announced it in March, and they only have a couple games coming for Switch. It's a lot smoother they could focus more on Switch 2 without all these new releases and stuff. It does make more sense, but I really hope it gets announced soon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
I'm
waiting for
gonna
evidence. I think people are jumping to conclusions with the amiibo restocks. I think it's a worthy conversation. I'm not saying it can't happen. You know, I just think that we need more evidence to think that the amiibo restocks are tied to a Switch 2 teaser. I think that is a possibility, but there are other possibilities. Like I mentioned the museum thing. And that is also just a possibility. There are other possibilities. I mentioned this in the video when I talked about this. It could be the case that the amiibo restocks are only happening this year because they're trying to push them out one last time before the next generation comes out. So it might be tied to the next generation, but it doesn't mean that that Switch 2 is going to be marketed when these are restocked, if that makes sense. It might just be like one last push before they move on to the next system.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking we might get a direct mini in January. Or we could get a teaser in January. I'm kind of 50-50 on whether the teaser would be first or the direct mini. But either January, February, we get the teaser or the direct, you know, in one of those 2 months, and then the full reveal in March with the pre-orders and everything going live.
Yeah. Do you think they're going to do a Switch 2 presentation at some point, similar to how they did the Switch presentation? Or you think it's going to be like a Switch 2 Direct?
I think it's going to be a trailer or a direct. I don't think they're going to do another live presentation.
Yeah. I hope they do, because it was really cool. But yeah,
I mean, I think it might be a big direct. I think it might be a big, exciting direct, but I don't think it's going to be another live conference. But we'll see. So we're going to move on to the next topic. But before we do, I want to get to the super chat here. Taker610, thank you for the super chat. Taker asks, can we get a name prediction from each of you? I'm assuming it's about Switch 2. Yeah. So, name prediction. Who wants to go first?
You know, I'll go first just so I can steal. I want to steal an easy one.
Oh, go ahead.
Don't
Super
do it.
Switch.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you're gonna go with Super Nintendo Switch.
Yeah.
So you subscribe to the color button theory then, because Mario RPG is using the Famicom colors, which comes out in November, and then Thousand Year Door is also using the Famicom colors, which is even more weird, and that's coming out sometime in 2024.
You know, I don't really subscribe to it. I just like it, you know. So so we don't really know. I'll just go with it. I like it.
Okay.
I will say, East 10 also uses the Famicom colored buttons.
East 10.
Yeah, it's a JRPG franchise that is launching on Switch.
When does it come out? Do you know?
The Japan version's coming out.
How do I spell the title?
Soon.
I heard there were other titles, but what's
it's
how do I spell it?
YS. Yeah, YS and then X for 10.
Oh.
Yeah, it's coming out in Japan very soon, but like
Nordics?
It's probably not going to get localized for years.
Okay.
I believe it uses the Super Famicom colors, I've heard.
It's releasing, has announced the preload in preparation for its release on September. I'm confused. So there's a preload available now in September later this week. Interesting. Yeah. And it uses the Famicom colors, but it's also coming out for the PlayStation, right? So I guess the question is it using the Famicom colors on PlayStation as well, or is it different on PlayStation? That matters a lot.
Sure. Yeah.
It matters a lot.
PlayStation, it retcons it. Yeah.
I'll have to look into this, because if they're just using the traditional PlayStation stuff, but this game uses the Famicom colors on just a Nintendo Switch, then I think the release date for this game, the actual release date for this game, could be very telling for when the Switch 2 comes out. I'll have to look more into it. That
Yeah.
is interesting, though.
Yeah, so it's coming out very, very soon in Japan. And, you know, these games take a while to get localized. So
Mhm.
it wouldn't come out in America for like a year or two.
Yeah, my Google search only told
Um,
me about the preload, but I guess is it coming out even sooner? Like not sooner, but is it coming out shortly afterwards?
September 28th. Yeah, 3 days.
Well, I have to do more research on this because that my Google search says that's like the early. Well, let's see
Yeah.
here. Nihon Falcon has announced that the preload for the Japanese release of East X Nordics is now available in preparation for. Okay, so yeah, okay, you're right. I'm sorry. Okay, so it's coming out in 3 days. But we don't. Yeah. Oh, I'll take a look. But if it's coming out this year, I don't think it means a lot.
Probably, yeah, I wouldn't count on it meaning much.
Yeah.
It's just a crazy thing to throw out there.
Yeah, for sure. So that said, though, Brandon says Super Switch. What do you say?
Well,
We're
know,
ending the topic here. We're gonna go into his other topic after this. So this.
yeah, I'm gonna be boring. Nintendo Switch 2. That leaves
Yeah,
you with you have to get creative. Yeah.
Well,
That's why I went first.
I was gonna say Nintendo Switch too, so I can't. But I guess I have to pick something different. All right. Nintendo Switch. Nintendo Switch. Okay, you ready?
Okay.
All right.
Boy.
You guys are gonna hate me. You guys are gonna hate me.
I feel like I know what it is then.
It's gonna be called Nintendo Switch. That's it.
What? Like it's a remake of the Switch?
It's exactly. It's a remake.
Oh.
That's it.
Not even
That's
a 4K on there.
No, it's implied.
It's implied.
Yeah,
Okay. Gotcha.
there we go.
Nintendo Switch 4K model.
Yeah, no, I mean honestly, I think it would be they'll just call it Switch 2. I don't.
Yeah,
I
probably
think
most
I think
likely
this
the case.
very probably have another name in mind. But I guess my point is that if you call it Super Nintendo Switch, what happens 6 years from now when you're like, hey, we should make another Switch? What do you call that? Right. So I guess my problem with giving it like a name that implies it's above Switch is that what do you do if you want to make another installment for the next generation? Like, I guess
You should call it Nintendo Switch Electric Boogaloo.
okay.
The Nintendo Switch U.
Nintendo Switch Deluxe.
Yep.
The new Super Nintendo Switch.
Ooh.
Nintendo Switched.
I'm gonna switch over
Nintendo
to the
Switcheroo.
Yeah, I think the name is tough. I honestly I think Switch 2 is just like it's really boring, but it gets the job done.
Yeah.
If you could do like Nintendo Switch 4K, I guess, but then that wouldn't.
That's not a next generation name.
Well, all right. So I'll say this. I do think they can get away with a name like a Nintendo Switch subtitle, and they just rely on the marketing to make it clear that this is that, right? So assuming they don't do like a Super Switch or they don't do a Nintendo Switch 2, if there's a name that's kind of helps to differentiate it from prior systems, it's still Nintendo Switch, but there's an additional piece to it. Nintendo Switch. I thought about using Nintendo Switch I, but Nintendo Switch AI would be interesting. The NI, NSI.
Have you guys thought about the
I'm trying to think out loud here.
Have you guys thought about the possibility that they drop the Switch branding?
Strong, no. Disagree.
I doubt it.
Yeah, I don't want them to do that, but
I don't think
yeah,
it's
I
going
don't
to
think they'll
happen.
do it.
I
But
think it's
they're
clear
gonna
that
do
what
the
direction
3D
they're headed in with everything we've heard about this system so far. So I don't
3DS,
think that's what they're doing.
3DS kept the DS branding and the Wii U kept the Wii branding. So I'll backpedal on that. Yeah.
Nintendo Switch Advance, Nintendo 3DS, Nintendo DS. I don't know. I can't think.
Yeah.
I think it might be something different.
I definitely don't think it's going to be like Nintendo Switch 4K because I think that's too specific of a feature. I think there's going to be a lot more features than just 4K for the system.
Right, like I guess
This isn't a Pro
Switch-
that does the same game
Focus.
as 4K.
Oh yeah, there is that rumor about Focus, right? Like
Ooh.
Yeah,
does-
it's fake though. Nintendo would have taken it down.
Mm.
Nintendo Switch Focus does work. It is something like that though. Like a Switch Focus, like that would work.
Yeah. I have a feeling that they're not gonna put a 2 on the end of it. I think it's the smartest move, and I think it's what they should do, but that's not Nintendo. They haven't ever done that. But we do have a new president. Furukawa is worried about the numbers, so maybe it is called Switch 2. Who knows?
I'm trying to think of a name. That kind of symbolizes the power gap, but also the innovation of what's within this system. And I do think that makes it tricky because we don't know entirely what it is that makes the system unique. We've heard something about a camera, but if we're hearing about a lot of these dev kits and there's nothing really gimmicky coming out from this stuff, it does make me think the system's very iterative. So, Super Switch, Switch 2, I think those are honestly on the right track. I think the name is going to be something that really tells us that this is an advancement of what the Switch is. But it,
Yeah.
The Nintendo. It's
The
hard to think
Nintendo
of
Switch.
without adding a
I
two.
got to sit on this for a long time.
Oh no! I got it. The Nintendo.
Just the Nintendo.
Yup. Just the Nintendo.
Just go back to the roots.
No, I
The
think it's
NES. The Nintendo Entertainment Switch.
and I think I think I got something. I got something brewing in my mind. Okay, it's kind of All right, so just kind of stick with me here.
Okay.
We think about what we know about the Switch so far, right? A lot of it's very like it's going to make the games look a lot better, right? It's going to offer more of this premier sort of home console experience, very theatrical, visual upgrades, performance. I'm trying to think of something that's kind of like, oh, okay, I got it. Ready? You ready?
Okay.
Nintendo Switch Max. Like I was thinking like IMAX. Nintendo Switch.
I feel
Max.
like that's like
Switch Maximum.
when I think of that, the first thing that popped in my head was iPhone 15 Max, which is just a bigger, slightly more feature-heavy version of the iPhone. So I feel like it just kind of implies that it's the same thing with a few more features, and that's it. It doesn't really apply next gen to me.
Interesting point. Okay, something more.
How about the do you think the Nintendo
Feature-y.
Switch Plus would work?
I thought about that before, but I threw it out.
Yeah,
because I
that's
used to
kind
think
of like
Switch.
the Pro version.
Yeah.
Right,
same
exactly.
issue.
It feels too revision-y. It needs to be saying it's like next gen, like next leap. So yeah, maybe Max is wrong, right? Maybe I'm on the wrong track. It's gotta. Well, the reason I said Max is because I was thinking of IMAX, right? I wasn't thinking, but because I was trying to think of something like theatrical, but like enhancing.
Okay, if let's hypothetically say that VR is an extra feature of this upcoming Switch, and that's
I
the
don't
big
believe
thing.
that. I don't believe that. I think that's too unrealistic to fit within we could
Yeah, it
we could
wouldn't be at launch.
hypothesize that, but I guess the reason I don't want to do that because one, we got to move on. We got to move on, and that's an entirely new conversation talking about VR possibilities. And I don't think that VR is going to be shoehorned in to a system that's going to be at an approachable price for the mass market. Like that just doesn't seem realistic to me at all. Yeah. King Frost, you're right. Switch Max does sound endgamey. The point is that both Brandon and Sam have put me in between a rock and a hard place here because they took out the two names that I think make the most sense. So I'm trying to think of something else. Nintendo Switch, brilliant. Nintendo Switch, amazing. Nintendo Switch Ultra. That's interesting. Planet Mars. CAG, new Nintendo Switch. I would throw the donut across.
How about this one? The Nintendo Revolution.
No.
Just go with an old code name.
Yeah, it's also got to be quick. It can't be like a big long name either. Nintendo.
It's hard to
Joe,
think
Switch
about because it's
Infinity.
because it's got to be catchy. It can't be like, oh, I got my Super Nintendo Switch Advance here. You want to play with me? It's got to be snappy.
Yeah. Oh well, I give up. I'm sorry. We gotta move on. I'm sorry. I can't think of a name. Oh, okay. I got it. Ready? Here we go.
Okay.
It's a shot in the dark. It's a shot in the dark. But here we go. Nintendo Switch Nova.
Okay. Wow.
That's it. Nintendo
Be
Switch
cool.
Nova.
I never thought of that one. Yeah, it sounds
No.
good.
It sounds cool. It sounds like kind of like modern and next gen-y. And it does imply like next gen and powerful. But it's, they could conceivably think of something else afterwards. But it's a total shot in the dark, right?
After Nintendo Switch Nova, they could do the Nintendo Switch Supernova.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
There you go. You saved the Super for the third iteration. And by that point, it'll probably be the end of the world. So we won't have to worry about the fourth Switch. But yeah. And also, yeah, some of you guys are saying like Nova almost sounds like Nuevo, like new, but it's also like Supernova. That's it. Mega Nova, it's another direction you can go. All right, that's it. We figured it out, guys. Nintendo Switch Nova. Here we go. Yeah, I mean, it's probably wrong. You're probably right, Netweed, but we'll see what happens. Anyways, I'll leave the poll up for you guys to kind of mess with that for a bit, but let's move on to the next topic. All right. And this is just talking about what we want to see with the next open world Zelda. We don't have a lot of information on what the next open world Zelda is, but I did put out a video on Sunday to kind of talk about what we kind of do know. We know that the director of Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, Hidemaro Fujibayashi, already has a plan in mind for the next game. We also know that they plan on making the next game even more enjoyable than Tears of the Kingdom. These are things we've taken from interviews. We also know that with Tears of the Kingdom, they feel they exhausted everything they can do in this world. Now, I'm sure there's room for interpretation there, but I do think a lot of that implies, well, one, there's no DLC. That's been like double deconfirmed already currently. But I think it also implies that they're ready to move on from something new. Even in the interviews, they almost went in an entirely new direction before making Tears of the Kingdom. Like, there was some debate if they were going to do a follow-up sequel in the same world or if they were to create a new world. They debated that at one point. And they chose this direction, and it's a direction they don't normally go. I think they're not going to do it again. If they, I just think it's unlikely. Especially because we're reaching the end of the Switch generation. We're moving on to Switch 2. It's going to be a new generation, maybe Switch Nova. And it's just going to be something new. The power gap between Switch and Switch 2 is tremendous. And I do think this actually tells us a lot about what to expect from the next system. Because a lot of what kind of, I guess, what steers the Zelda team somewhat are capabilities of a system, or rather limitations of a system. So we didn't get Breath of the Wild until they could make Breath of the Wild.
Right.
They've wanted to make an open world Zelda game. They wanted to make an open world game a long time ago, but it wasn't until the Wii U that it was truly feasible. And then with the Switch, they were like, okay, well, what can we do now with the extra power, with the better CPU, with the less bottlenecks? They added a whole bunch of sky islands, a whole bunch of exploration of the sky, seamless transitions to the depths, a lot more non-playable characters interacting with you in the world, a whole bunch of other physics-based mechanics that just allow you a lot more interaction with the environment, and there's just a lot more that can be done. What's next? We've heard about the tech demos from Gamescom. One of them included Breath of the Wild running at 4K 60 frames per second with virtually no load times. So to me, what that says is the next game, it's going to be a game that's going to be running on a system that can load things far quicker. And if you look at how games run on PS5 and Series X, where they have the solid-state drives and their loading's very fast, this not only facilitates fast loading, but it can impact gameplay. With open-world games, the idea with open-world games is that they're constantly loading. As you progress throughout the world, it's constantly loading up. It loads in a way where it's supposed to feel like a seamless transition, so you never notice loading. But the fact of the matter is, with open-world games, as you explore, you'll see objects and materials pop in, and you won't see them appear naturally if you're looking for it. Or you'll see textures that are blurry at a certain distance and become more clearly defined as you get closer. Things like that will become far less apparent with better loading on newer hardware. So I think with the next open world Zelda, it's going to be a far better realized open world with less technical limitations, where we can move about the world quicker and we won't see those moments where the game might halt. So for example, when you're surfacing from the depths, if you go down the hole and decide not to go all the way down and climb back up, the game will halt. That wouldn't happen in a next-gen Zelda. And I also think the game would be running at 60 frames per second. You may say that's crazy for a Nintendo game to be open world and be at 60 frames per second, but that's part of the big deals about this next system. It's a huge jump. They showcased Breath of the Wild at 4K 60, but also outside of the open world Zelda games, most modern Zelda games have been running at 60 FPS. Skyward Sword HD, Link's Awakening Remake, other Switch titles. Heck, even on the Nintendo 3DS, they ran A Link Between Worlds at 60 frames per second. So I do think with more powerful hardware, we're going to see smoother gameplay with faster loading, and with those things, I think there will be faster movement. I think there will be more situations where better reaction times will make more sense, so perhaps more of an emphasis on combat and platforming. And that's kind of what I think we can take away from what we know so far about the next open world Zelda. But that was my opener for this discussion. Have at it, boys.
All right. With the big thing... Oh, sorry.
You go ahead.
The big thing that I want to see with this next generation, because of course I want to see better visuals and a new art style and all that, but that's kind of like expected things. As far as like what they can do with the power in terms of the gameplay, obviously Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are both very physics-heavy games, but neither of them use very much like destruction physics or anything. I think it would be really cool if they focused on having like really fine destructions. You go up to Bakamla Camp, and instead of thinking about just how to kill the enemies, you can start thinking about how to topple the entire camp down, bring it down with some explosives or something. Add a whole new element of strategy to the game with some really cool destruction physics that would look amazing as well and show off the new capabilities of your system. I think that's a direction not a lot of developers have been going lately. And Nintendo should push even harder on the physics side with the new CPU.
So something I noticed about Tears of the Kingdom, there's a lot of when you try to open up more areas inside caves and there's like boulders you can break down.
Yeah.
Those are permanent fixtures in the world.
Yeah.
Once you break down those rocks, they're gone. So what's interesting about that is that there's a lot of rocks, right? So like you can break like rocks for a particular cave and leave, and then come back and they're still broken. But not all of them are broken. It's just the ones you broke.
It's very similar to a Bethesda game. They've been doing that. I don't know if they were doing that as far back as like Morrowind on the Xbox, but I know in like Oblivion onward at least they've been doing that.
Yeah, it's
So
pretty cool when you think about it.
semi-permanent to the destruction.
Just to anything that can be moved.
You know what's actually a really good comparison is, I don't know if you guys have heard of Red Faction Guerrilla.
Yes.
You could destroy practically everything in that game, and it's very, very cool. And it'd be cool to see that in a Zelda game.
Oh yeah.
But even more, what I'd like to see in a Zelda game is, I think you mentioned this in your video, Andres, different factions. Because Zelda is such a vast world, you can have different factions you could join. You could join the Gerudo, the Sheikah, the Kingdom, etc. And I think adding choice within the world.
Yeah.
They already have played with it with the side adventures in Tears of the Kingdom. In Hateno Village, you could side with the mayor or the Mushroom Lady.
Yeah, it's interesting. So my thought process, right? Because I'm glad you kind of brought up factions, right? That's a very Elder Scrolls kind of mechanic, and I brought up how like we see the introduction of side adventures in Tears of the Kingdom, right? Which are kind of like more content-rich, expansive side quests. They're a little bit more involved, more steps to them, and they even have some cutscenes. Even sometimes less ambitious cutscenes, but there are some kind of like some scenes to them. I like the idea of them expanding on this with more side adventures, right? And you mentioned how there can be factions, right? Like that's definitely like an Elder Scrolls like thing. Whenever someone plays an Elder Scrolls game, well, oftentimes they don't do the main quest. There are a whole bunch of other major side quests that have huge storylines, right? Like they're very significant in and of themselves. And I think it'd actually be very important or valuable. Maybe value is a better word. It'd be very valuable for the direction Nintendo's going with the Zelda games to incorporate more of that. Because you look at all the things you can do in the world for Tears of the Kingdom, especially even more so than Breath of the Wild. There's so much you can do. And it may be more about just creating this really fun, interactive, believable world. And by offering more side adventures, perhaps even incorporating factions and just kind of more quest lines, it actually helps support the open world more. Because like wherever you go, it can lead to a different story, a different adventure for you. And so I think it kind of enriches the experience by doing more of that. So I would love it if Nintendo were to take a little bit more, go a little bit more in that direction.
Yeah, I want to see like big towns and like things that like you need the open world to do, like to make sense, right? Like, because we have this big open world, but then the towns that you go to are like basically the same size as what you come to expect, maybe a little bit bigger, but not like, they're not huge. They're very tiny little towns. They're not much bigger than classic Zelda towns. So I would want like actual cities and like big structures and things, like cool big giant castle. Because we have like Hyrule Castle, but that's kind of like the biggest place around for terms of like actually built things.
Yeah, I went into Breath of the Wild imagining Kakariko Village to be like a sprawling town bustling with life, and the little space that it does occupy, it does good with. People have routines and stuff. But I'd like to see something like Whiterun from Skyrim, for example. Like huge towns with a lot of stuff to do with them that you could spend hours in. That'd be very, very cool in the Zelda game with all its personality.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I got distracted because Nishquick just showed me something that's probably gonna be the video tomorrow. It's in the chat. Apparently, Zippo just said the next 3D Mario's open world. First off, I don't trust Zippo that much, but he has gotten some rumors correct recently, so I'll take a look at it. I'll tell you that I already expect the next Mario to be open world, but we'll talk about that tomorrow. It's interesting though, going back to the point of just like this game. Like I love the idea of there being more side quests. I love the idea of making the towns feel like more like living, breathing environments we can explore. Hateno is awesome. Hateno's, I think they did a great job with Hateno, and it would be amazing if more towns were like that, or even like. I mean, the truth is,
Gerudo Town's pretty good too.
Excuse me, I keep sneezing. But I actually think they did. All the towns are kind of a little bit more rich in Tears of the Kingdom than before. But I would like to see that expanded upon.
Yeah. I would like to see more stuff in between the towns with like actual like people, because like sometimes you'll see like a cabin in the woods or something, but a lot of it's just like, okay, there's a town, and then outside of the town there's nothing going on. And it makes sense for the storyline, right? Because, you know, Calamity Ganon, they're all kind of hiding in their small little groups of civilization that's left and stuff. But, you know, the next game doesn't have to do that. Like, I want there to be more going on in between the towns that feels more connected. Because the towns do kind of feel like just places set in the middle of nowhere sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there something else about Tears of the Kingdom that you want them to kind of do differently in the next one?
I think a more linear story and better dungeons.
You only get one. You only get one.
Nah, we can get both of those.
Then
I'll choose the other one then.
I would think.
Pick one.
Yeah. I think a more linear story would be helpful because I got spoiled by Nintendo with Tears of the Kingdom on a death.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page to an extent. I think that the game needs to stay open world. But so this actually ties into the side adventures we were just talking about, at least the way I envision it. I think what would maybe be really interesting about the next Zelda game is that it's so content rich and it's so open. There are several quest lines, and there are just different narratives in the game that are maybe somewhat tangentially related, right? But they all go in their own different directions, and they're all kind of open. But like I guess maybe how they incorporate the main story, I think they kind of tried it in Tears of the Kingdom, right? Like they had the side adventures that kind of gave you clues about what's kind of going on with Zelda. But then you also have the main quest. You're trying to find out what's going on with Zelda as you do the different dungeons. But then you also have the memories that actually tell you what's going on with Zelda. And there were definitely moments where it felt a little redundant, and there wasn't as much of an awareness of like these different quest lines. They didn't kind of they didn't have an awareness of each other, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And it would be, and I know that's tough, or it's tougher, but it would be interesting if they could find a way where they kind of get rid of those redundancies. Or if it isn't the case where they kind of write each story where they adapt based off where you are with the other stories, they at least write each story where they're so tangentially related, but you don't notice those redundancies. And I think that's important for the next game. And I think that would help to facilitate a better told story.
Yeah, I think something very easily that they could have done, especially for like the ending cutscenes for the dungeons. They could have had 4 separate cutscenes that you didn't really matter which particular order you watch them in, but it all has like different story elements at the end. So you can go in any order and you can view them, but they each have like a specific story cutscene. I think that would have been much better to get rid of the redundancy. It wouldn't have been ridiculously hard to do.
Yeah, I think retelling the imprisoning war 5 times is kind of dumb.
Yeah.
I think, like, I know I'm actually very high on Tears of the Kingdom's story. I think they did a lot of things great.
The parts where it is great. I think there's just not enough of it.
So I think
amazing.
Had they used the cutscenes for each dungeon to kind of tell us something new, instead of this exact same thing, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's a memory that's related to each sage and maybe a personal interaction they had with Sonya or Raru or Ganondorf. That would have been cool. Like, for example, the Gerudo sage. Like, what if we got to see a little bit of the internal strife between the Gerudos and Ganondorf? That would have been cool. Maybe that gives us a little bit more insight into the background of Ganondorf and who he is. That would have been nice, right? Or, I mean, maybe the Gorons. Maybe it could just kind of depict the struggles of the Gorons, or maybe it kind of ties to Gorondia, for example. It's like this ancient Goron city in the depths, and that can maybe give us a hint as to what was going on in the depths before Ganondorf. And then, you know, maybe the wind one could tie into the temple stuff in the sky. Like there are things they could have done that would have been different. Like maybe the Rito wanted to establish a better relationship with the Zonai because the Zonai descended from the heavens, right? Like maybe the Zonai know more about where the giant wind boat came from, right? Like that. There's things they could have done that would have enriched the lore, that would have been more interesting than just saying, "What secret stone, Demon King?" Like, you know, like that would have been nice. Yeah. I do want to say let's try to steer clear from blatant spoilers. Just because there's always people watching that of
course,
you know, haven't gotten to that part yet. So something that I would like to see in the next, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but I would like to see an enhanced combat. I kind of missed the Dark Nuts, and I think one of the reasons they didn't bring them in is just because there's less of an emphasis on having like duels in this current iteration of Link in Hyrule. I would like to see them kind of bring that back. Maybe even make it feel a little bit of Dark Soulsy. In fact, what's kind of interesting is that the depths element to Tears of the Kingdom does kind of feel kind of a bit Dark Soulsy, and they did incorporate more boss fights. I would like them to kind of move, like incorporate even more unique boss fights, and have a system where dueling is a little bit more important. Like you do technically have a duel at the end of the game without spoiling too much. I want there to be, and it's like this. It's a rampant motif throughout the Zelda series, like duels, sword to sword combat, like that happens. So I would have wanted a system that maybe focuses a little bit more on that. And that's kind of why I harped on the whole 60 FPS thing, because if you have a combat system that's more based off reaction time and fluidity of movement, that becomes a little bit more valuable.
Oh, yeah. I definitely want, like, unique monsters. I mean, even in Xenoblade, we get, like, unique monsters throughout the whole world. There's constantly, like, new types of enemies and stuff. I want to be constantly finding new different types of creatures and different versions of creatures. I want to come across some like crazy version of a Lionel that's completely unique, only shows up in this one area, you know? Like if you're gonna have this big world, why reuse the same kind of enemies with like slight changes? That's so uninspired.
I actually kind of, so what's interesting is that there's some of the constructs, I forget the name of the giant, what are the name of the giant construct bosses?
I think
you know what I mean.
Something construct,
Flux construct?
Something like that. I know what you're talking about, though. Yeah, the cube monsters.
I
think that's what
they're
just called Flux. They're just called
back.
Flux constructs. Welcome back. It's Flux construct 1 through 3. Like sometimes they have them, and they might have like a chest or an object attached to them, and they also have the stone taluses that have different elements. So they kind of mix them up a little bit, but it would have been nice. Like, for example, you know how there's a labyrinth and there's 9 labyrinths kind of, but really each labyrinth is divided into 3 different pieces: sky, surface, and the depths. And there's like a boss fight at the end of each one in the depths, but the boss fights are all the same. It would have been nice if each one had like a unique kind of boss there. Like I did like that they added more boss fight types in Tears of the Kingdom. Like I appreciate the variety, but I'm spoiled and I want more variety. Like,
I want more like unique things like the pirates that come in the game. Why are they not dressed as pirates? Why don't we get special pirate versions with like special attacks and different moves and
Yeah.
piratey things? Like, why is it just generic enemies?
so I think part of what they did with Tears of the Kingdom and also Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom actually kind of remedied this to some extent, but I think the idea is they came up with a lot of simple commands and interactions that would have sort of a blanket effect across the world. And so there was kind of simplicity, right? And they kind of didn't incorporate as many designs and things you can do because they wanted to kind of work across a variety of different elements with all the physics and everything at hand. And then in Tears of the Kingdom, they offer a little bit more variety with what you can do and there's different settings and enemies. But it's still kind of, like there's more variety, but there's not like a lot more variety.
I feel like it's just something that they didn't focus on as much. So I feel like most of their development time was probably put into making Ultra Hand and Fuse work.
And that's another interesting thing about like the next Zelda game. Perhaps with more powerful hardware, there'll be less development time used on just trying to make these things work, and they're just like, we have more horsepower, so it's easier to get it working. Like there may be ideas they want to implement that won't require as much kind of tinkering. Maybe it still requires more tinkering because they'll just get even more ambitious, right? Like, oh well, if we can do this, what else can we do, right? So they'll still find a way to make it a 6-year development time, but
it may be easier on their like systems if they're not constantly loading in new like character assets and stuff. It may be easier on the streaming systems.
And don't quote me on this, but if the Switch 2 has better like storage, like say SSD or something, loading times in the world itself would be easier, right? Like pop-in would be reduced. Or am I wrong?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is true. Because
It's
streaming
still
data
loading
from
times.
the disk to RAM, it would be much quicker.
Yeah, so they could use that to have everything be flawless in the next Zelda game, and I do think that there's a good chance that they do a upgrade of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Not for free, of course, but
I kind of I do kind of feel like there's a chance we may see a 4K 60 FPS version of these games. I'm not totally convinced because we've seen tech demos for things before and they don't come out. So
I think Tears of the Kingdom will get a version, but not Breath of the Wild.
What if with the Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack, all the next gen upgrades do not exactly?
Ooh, that is such a smart idea, actually. Man, I kind of hope that they just don't charge us.
I want to point out I talked about this idea a year ago. You didn't say it was a smart idea then.
I don't remember this. I might not have been on for that week. Who knows?
I would love it though. I think it'd be a really cool idea.
And yeah, if you didn't own expansion pack, it would be like $10 or something otherwise.
Yeah.
Or you could play your current version of the game on the system, but the upgrade would be like for, actual upgrades.
Yeah.
I will say, this is kind of going away from the next Zelda, open world Zelda, but I think some people have this optimism that there may be a Tears of the Kingdom enhancement for Switch 2, and perhaps alongside this Tears of the Kingdom enhancement, there is a little bit of an expanded adventure. It's like the DLC, but it's not DLC. I think people will be very upset if that happened, because then it'd be like, so all the people who bought Tears of the Kingdom on Switch don't get the DLC. So I'm I'm gonna say that doesn't happen, but there still could be a Tears of the Kingdom graphics patch, and maybe when this comes out, what they do is they maybe add like a master mode or something like that. And this is available for both. It's not like a lot of extra content. It's just, like a different difficulty or a new game plus kind of thing. and it gives people a reason to go back to Tears of the Kingdom to play it again with the new visuals. Like that's something I can kind of see.
Yeah.
At this stage, I think it's hopium to expect like a new like DLC like adventure added.
Yeah, I agree. But I kind of just like, okay, well, they'll just move on to whatever's next. And I'm excited for that. So get to that quicker.
Well,
So do you guys think that in the next Zelda game that they're going to attempt to make a world to the size of Tears of the Kingdom?
No. I think they'll
good
do
question
something
to ask.
that's... Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't think it will needs to be much bigger than Breath of the Wild, honestly, if they're doing a whole new like map layout, even if they're doing Hyrule again. So I'm gonna say probably not, just because I feel like unless they have so much more content to fill in the world, like I feel like even with Breath of the Wild's map, they can add so much more content to that map with that size, and there's no real need to expand beyond that. So I don't know, but I would kind of lean towards it not being way too big for no reason.
So, what's the biggest map of the
it's
Xenoblade
also-
games?
X.
And yet they still
I think X
got
is,
away with making Xenoblade 2 and 3 just fine. No one complained. Well, there were some complaints. I definitely wish 2 had like a more of a continuous open world. It was kind of disappointing when I would see like the head of Gormott, and I was like, oh man, I wish I could go all the way up there, and you can't. Yeah. I mean, I think that's not going to happen with the next Zelda game. Like whatever you see, you're going to be able to get to. It would be interesting though to see a world that's as kind of creative and crazy as like Xenoblade 2, but you can literally explore everything in it.
Yeah,
that would be so cool.
Yeah. Oh, what if the Xenoblade 2, like way down the road, was to get a reimagining where it's actually like open world and you could like go to the different titans by a like sky mount. This would be way down the
I think
road.
at one point they wanted it to be open world. Like I think at one point it wasn't supposed to be sections, like you would actually like sail across the cloud sea from one titan to another.
Did you know that Wind Waker was supposed to be open world? And
it kind of
Skyward
is.
Sword, obviously.
It is. It kind of is. I have a
bit.
hard time trying to explain it to myself how it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It basically
I mean,
you
is.
can travel the open sea. There's just certain things you can't do. I guess it qualifies as an open world.
You can pretty much map out everything as soon as you get the ability to sail anywhere, though. You can map out the whole map if you want.
I mean, if a game like Horizon is open world, I suppose Wind Waker is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you go inside a dungeon, you have to load in, but so do you. That's the same. It works the same whenever you go inside a shrine in Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, right?
Well,
so like,
in Skyrim, when you go into caves, you have to load in. You know.
Yeah.
Open world doesn't mean seamless always. I mean,
you gotta load
Starfield's
into
open world,
towns too.
and there's so many menus in that game.
Oh yeah.
There's not a lot of towns in Wind Waker. There's one town, but you just go into the island and like.
There's 2, I think.
This is a good question.
There's Windfall, and then there's the starting island, which is outside. Yeah. And then there's, I mean, if you count the Rito village town.
Oh yeah, that does count. There's like a merchant and stuff.
Yeah.
I think it is open world. Like
basically.
I guess how do you like how is it not open world? I think is the better question. Like I guess okay, so I think part of the problem is that open world it tends to imply not just how vast the world is, but also progression, where a lot of games have linear progression, right? So that's Wind Waker has a linear progression from a story perspective, but you can explore the seas kind of however you choose. It's weird.
Yeah. I mean, it's as close to as open world as you're going to get on the GameCube.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Anyway, I think we got to wrap up the show. So I'm going to end the poll here. And I'm going to open things up to a few minutes of Q&A, not very long. Guys, if there's any final comments or things you want to say at me, or send super chats or whatever, try to get my attention, because I won't be able to get to everything. But, for like the next 10 minutes, we'll do a few questions and then we'll close out. Probably should even do 10 minutes because we're already at 2 hours and 35. I wanted to keep the podcast at 2.5 hours max. Anyways, the poll's over. And of the 105 votes, 54% or 53% said yes. And the thing about YouTube is whenever you're in the poll, it always deducts one percentage. So I'm guessing that 53% said yes, there will be a Switch 2 teaser before the end of the year, and 47% of you said
it just
no.
doesn't tell you the percentages like after. It doesn't tell you the decimals. That's the difference. So the ones made up with the decimals in between.
I don't know. But what I do know is that more people said that there will be a Switch 2 teaser before the end of the year. And
but it's very close. It's basically 50-50.
It's very close.
Which is kind of how I feel about it. I'm very 50-50 on it.
Yeah, I think there's a chance it could happen. A solid chance. A very solid chance. But I need a little bit more evidence before I jump into it. Like,
I'm probably 40-60 on it happening.
Yeah, the Amiibo restock theory, I definitely I think it's implying something, but I think it's worth the conversation, but I think there's more. That's not the only possible answer to what it is. So I mean, let's think about this. Like, if the Switch 2 teaser is happening, why does it make sense to release different Amiibo when that happens? Like, what about the Switch 2 teaser would excite people to buy Amiibo?
I'm gonna tell you exactly what it is, because tell me the franchises that are getting the Amiibo restocks.
Smash, Mario, Zelda, and Metroid. So would people buy more Amiibo because it showcased Prime 4? Maybe. Would people buy more Smash Amiibo if they announced like a Smash Ultimate Deluxe or something? Maybe. Would people buy more Zelda Amiibo if they announce a something Zelda? I guess. And I guess the same thing for Mario. Like, they could. But also, what do they showcase in the teaser that's Zelda related? I'll tell you this.
Just Tears of the Kingdom at high resolution, 60 FPS.
Yeah, I have theorized that, like, if there is going to be a Switch 2 teaser and Zelda's going to be in it, then maybe it would be a remake. You put something out that's
Ocarina of Time remake, baby.
That'd be pretty crazy, right? It'd be pretty crazy.
That's like one of my most wanted remakes. I want that to get a remake. I want Chrono Trigger to get a remake. Those two games.
I do feel like it's very likely that Nintendo will use a Tears of the Kingdom Enhanced Edition to market the next Switch and get that game just selling more on another system.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, so let me get to some questions in the chat. Netweed, which, if any, would you consider more important or relevant? Nintendo sending emails to NSO members about registering for Prime 4's wish list, or to the Switch 2 Gamescom demos rumor?
Oh, Switch 2 Gamescom rumors holds way more weight.
The Gamescom demos rumor, because
I mean, it's basically a leak.
Yeah, it is a leak as far as I'm concerned. I don't even necessarily like calling it a rumor. I mean, take it with a grain of salt if you like, but the story is corroborated by several sources, all of which have a strong track record, and it's well documented that they all have connections to the industry. So, and these stories lined up, right? Like Universal Nintendo, Eurogamer, Video Games Chronicle, Nate the Hate. I don't think they all are in on some lie. I don't believe that. So that to me, that's given us a lot more. I mean, So, but I mean, I think if you just watch my videos, I think the answer is evident, because these tech demos have given us a lot of material to talk about and speculate on, but Nintendo putting out, I mean, I guess Nintendo sending emails to NSO members about registering for Prime 4's wish list, like, that says, hey, yeah, Prime 4 is not canceled.
Yeah.
That's good news. But I also think we already kind of knew that Prime 4 wasn't canceled. I mean, I think some people, I mean, I guess I have a confidence that Prime 4 is fine. And maybe that's where I can see more, some people might put more weight in that kind of email for the wish list, because some people just think Prime 4 is not in good shape because we still haven't seen it. I think the reason we haven't seen Prime 4 is just because Nintendo hasn't shown it, because they've decided they want to save it for some reason. And now I think that reason is because it's going to be a cross-gen title. We'll see, but I'm not worried about it. So anyways, short answer, the Switch 2 games got demos are a bigger deal.
Yeah.
Joe 6831.
And
Andres, do you think development costs for the next Zelda game will increase, and by how much? The ceiling for this game is going to be unprecedented. I do think it'll cost more than Tears of the Kingdom. I think every time they're going to up the ante. That's just what they do. But Sam, what were you going to say?
Yeah. I get why they didn't show Prime 4 at all so far, but I find it so weird that they haven't shown Prime 2 yet. I think that's just weird. Because I saw like a roadmap of Prime 2 getting shown in September, Prime 3 February, with the announcement of Prime 4. But maybe they just bundle those up in February, or maybe they don't come at all.
Yep.
I don't know.
I think a bundle in February could be very possible, because I think they're going to be very simple remasters, and Metroid isn't exactly something that just sells, instantaneously. So having it as a bundle for 60 could definitely help sell, instead of trying to release them both for like 40 or 60.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not like
if they're not
Retro
getting
has a hand in.
Go on.
Go ahead.
No, what were you going to say?
It's not like Prime 2 and 3 Retro has a hand in it anymore. They had a hand in Prime 1, but now they're all in on Prime 4. So, yeah, I think it was Iron Galaxy handling 2 and 3 themselves.
I can see, I see the argument that, given how much effort went into Prime 1 and how we know Prime 2 probably won't have as much effort, that unless it's a separate studio, right? I think there's definitely an argument to be made that 2 and 3 come together just to kind of match the kind of overall value of Prime 1 in terms of work put in. So maybe they do come out together early next year. But I also think there's still time for both to be kind of have their showcase in a direct, right? Because let's say Prime 4 is, I think Prime 4 is, if the earliest is coming out, it's the second half of 2024. And truth be told, I do think there's a chance it comes out in 2025. It really comes down to how Nintendo's going to position their lineup for Switch 2. But I think it's probably coming out next year. And I could see a scenario where Prime 2 comes out in an early year, around an early next year, and then Prime 3 comes out in the summer, and then Prime 4 is kind of like a fall title. Like that, I think that's very conceivable. That said, I do see a scenario where Prime 2 and 3 are kind of treated like Pikmin 1 and 2 shortly before 4's release. I think that does make sense.
Yeah, so I remember before the Nintendo Direct, you said something along the lines of, if we don't see Prime 2 or Prime 4 here, Prime 4 could be a 2025 game. You said something like that, if I'm remembering correctly. How do you feel about that?
I don't remember saying that. I'm not saying I didn't, but because I say a lot of things. But I do believe the thing that I really wanted to argue, though, is that if Prime 2 and 4 are not in the Direct, to me that says that for sure they're saving Switch 2. They're saving Prime 4 for Switch 2. Like, to me, seeing either in the Direct is, hey, Prime 4 is for sure a cross-gen Switch 2 title.
Yeah.
I guess it does open the door for Prime 4 coming out in 2025, because we don't know how Nintendo's handling kind of like this lineup of games of Prime 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So, for example, if let's say we get a normal February Direct early next year, and it's just Prime 2 remastered, then you could make the argument that we won't see Prime 4 till early 2026. Just because if Prime 1 came out February 2023, Prime 2 comes out February 2024, then people will be like, oh, I guess Prime 3 is coming out February 2025, right? So where does that put Prime 4? I don't think that's how it's actually going to go down. But, I am a little curious on what they're going to do with Prime 2 now. Is it going to be bundled with 3, or are they each just going to come out in subsequent directs? How's that pattern
I think they will be bundled, because I think if they release 2, I think it won't sell nearly as well as 1, and I think people will be interested in it, but they'll be like, okay, another old remastered Prime game, cool. But then the third time they do that, I think most people aren't going to care at all. I think only the people in the Metroid community, like the diehard fans, are going to buy it, and pretty much everybody else is going to be like, I'm just going to wait for 4. Like, I just bought 1, and then I bought 2. I'm not going to now buy 3, like another remastered Prime game within like a year or a year and a half time, and then buy 4. I feel like that's just too much. I feel like they're going to bundle 2 and 3, and people will just be like, okay, I'll play both those, just buy them both at the same time. Because I don't think 3 would get very much love if they did the separate releases.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not of the camp that Prime 4 is like not real and it's releasing in like 2040. Like, I think it's a very real game. And yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I think it's very real, and I think chances are like 80% it releases next year. I think it's very likely. But I know they're waiting to reveal it because Switch 2, but I feel like we should have seen a teaser already. Just something to satiate us fans. I think 30 seconds would even do the trick, you know?
It would be really
tease
interesting.
It before the reveal event at like a February Direct Mini. That would be like the only like big thing they actually announced there. But it will just be a tease. They won't give a. They'll just be like, it's coming out this year.
Game Awards, Prime 2 Shadow Drop, and then Prime 4 teaser coming to Nintendo Switch, and ... 2024. Be crazy, right? That's not going to happen, but it'd be crazy. Yeah. I mean, they could tease Prime 4 at the Game Awards. I don't think they'll say they won't like tease the next system.
No,
in any obvious way.
Not at the same time as Prime 4, though.
Not at the same time. There will be speculation, but like if they don't even like put like a maybe they don't even do like the Switch thing. They just show Prime 4. Don't even specify a platform. That would be interesting. I think they could do that. Of course, people will see that it'll just see it still for Switch on the Nintendo website. But something like that, I think is possible.
I will say, it feels like Prime 4 with the Xbox era stuff and Nate the Hate and what you of Nintendo Prime have heard. It does feel like it's nearly done, and it's just lining up with Switch 2. It's so close to Switch 2 at this point that they're just going to launch it close to it.
We'll see.
So, yeah, they're just waiting for March, I assume, which is when the Switch 2 is likely to be shown.
Yeah.
Unless it happens at the Game Awards.
Yeah. It's tough. But, yeah, I think basically Prime 4 is just tied to Switch 2 marketing. I agree with that.
Yeah. This September Direct confirmed that for me.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so got a super chat here from Taker. Thank you very much for the super chat, Taker. Taker says, one last thought. What if Prime 4 is released first on Switch 2, and that's how it's shown for the first time, later on a scaled-back version hits Switch? I mean, I could see a scenario where it's a cross-gen release, and it comes out first on Switch 2, and then like a day or two later or a week later it comes out for Switch 1. Like, they could do that, but there wouldn't be that much of a gap between them. I'm more I think it's more likely they come out this exact same time.
I think so.
But if there is a gap, it's going to be a very small gap.
This game would have been originally made for Switch, so if any version is gonna come out second, it would be the Switch 2 version.
No.
But I think they'll come out at the same time.
I just think they're coming out at the same time. Yeah.
No, yeah, but I'm saying if either of them was gonna come out second, it would definitely be the Switch 2 version because that's the one that was developed second and would need more time. The Switch version is definitely gonna be the version that's done first. It's the version they started on.
Yeah, it's been developed and optimized for Switch specifically since at least late 2018. We don't know if they retained anything from the Bandai Namco development, but even assuming they haven't, it's been in development for 5 years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Listen, guys, I know I
it's
suggested a Prime 4 might come out in 2025, but I think it's coming out in 2024. Just so we're clear. I don't know what's going to happen, but I believe Prime 4 is coming out in 2024. So, Andy Robinson has said that he's heard Prime 4 is going to be the last big Switch title. What that means exactly, hard to say. But I think at this stage it means, sure, it's the last big Switch title, but it's also a cross-gen title for Switch 2.
Yeah.
And it's definitely happening next year. Like
that's how Breath of the Wild was the last big Wii U title.
That's what I was going to say. Let me pose that question. Is Breath of the Wild the last big Wii U title?
Yeah. I mean, it's the last big game that came out on Wii U.
It sold over 1 million copies.
For Wii U, that's pretty good.
Yeah. That's
that was actually very good for Wii U, considering like all attention was on the Switch at the time.
I mean, if that was the only sales for a Zelda game, it's bad.
Yeah.
But, it's still good. So, yeah, definitely, it is an interesting kind of like, how do you define that, right? But I think what's important to note is that what we heard from Andy Robinson doesn't know everything. He just heard from someone else. Like, I think there's a lot of room for interpretation, right? Because he also heard that that there was going to be a large gap between Tears of the Kingdom, the next big Nintendo Switch game or big Nintendo game, right? Because Nintendo's getting ready for the next generation. And what has that meant exactly, right? Because Mario Wonder is a pretty big game. But do we define Mario Wonder as a pretty big game? Like from a sales perspective, it is, right? But maybe not from a development budget perspective. And Prime 4 does fit that, which is kind of interesting because Prime 4 probably will not sell as much as Mario Wonder.
We haven't really seen any of their like huge budget games. I mean, even Pikmin 4, I doubt had like an absolutely massive budget.
Mario Wonder is going to be a very, very good game, and it's going to sell very, very much. It might even get close to Tears of the Kingdom sales. But it is a 2D game that will not benefit that much from being on more powerful hardware. Therefore, I think it's less of a big deal than something like Prime 4 or Tears of the Kingdom, which are like blockbuster. I'm gonna love Mario Wonder. It's probably gonna be my favorite 2D Mario, but it is a 2D game.
Anyway, okay, I think it's about time we end the show before we get to 3 hours. Everyone, thank you so much for coming by and watching. If you could like the stream, that would be helpful. And also, please make sure to check out Samuel's channel. It is linked in the description below. And show Brandon some love. He deserves it.
Go watch that Paper Mario 1,000 Year Door graphics video. It did pretty well, but more people could see it.
Yeah, the graphics comparison came out last Sunday?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. It actually it's done relatively well compared to all the other videos I released last week. I think it was like the second best performing or first best
when I was looking, it was like third, but I haven't looked in several days.
Well,
I'm very busy.
Yeah, it's
either way high up there. I mean, top 3 ain't bad.
Not bad. Yeah, not bad. Anyways, everyone, yes, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye, guys.
See you.